This is National Signing Day, and this is what the rankings for the class of 2020 look like right now. And over the next 5 hours, they are subject to change. Check that, guaranteed to change as young men change their minds, causing coaches to age quite quickly. As the race for the #1 class is on, it's National Signing Day. It's the day where every coach will tell you they met all of their needs, got everyone they wanted. It's also a day of half-truths and positive spin. Matt Schick, along with Jim Moore and National Recruiting Director Tom Luginbill, will have the latest commits, class rankings at the bottom and sides of your screens and tablets, whatever you're watching on today. This is the third iteration of the early signing period. For those who are new to this process, forever, it was first Wednesday in February. That was the signing period. But now for 3 years running, we've got a Wednesday here in December. How's that changed the process, Luke?
Well, if the first 2 hours East Coast time today are any indication, year one, we saw 72% of the class sign. Year two, 76%. In the first 2 hours that kids could turn in their national letters of intent today, over 500 Power 5 signees in the first 2 hours.
Wow.
So this thing's not going backward. It's only going forward.
No, it is going forward, and it should go forward. You know, I think it eases some pressure on coaches. I think it makes it a mad rush, obviously, when the season ends. But it eases some pressure on coaches. And when those kids put pen to paper, okay, or finger to tablet, it is the realization of a lifelong dream for them and their families, and they want to get there quicker.
Absolutely.
And now they're settled, and they're set to go, and they can start focusing on their college career.
When we think about that early signing period, you talk to coaches, is this something that they want to stay, or do they want changes to it?
You know, the guys that I've talked to like it. I don't know what your experience has been. Like I said, it's really difficult after the season. You hit the road and you hit it hard because you've got to make sure that these guys are locked in and they are firmly committed, and that's tough. But once it's over, once they've signed, you have a sense of relief. And now you can really start to focus earlier on the next classes.
Right.
Now, you've still got to finish out this class, but you start focusing on the next classes.
Well, it's a busy time. I think in the short-term postseason, you're preparing for a bowl game, and oh my God, we got to sign a recruiting class. Then you get to take that breather. You get the 2.5-week dead period there. To your point, you get to map out your month of January. And for some of these top-level programs, you're getting a 5-6 week head start on the 2021 class. Junior days, getting kids on campus and advancing your program while maybe some of your competitors still have more work to do in the month of January than, say, a top-level recruiter does every single year. The coaches love it. Because the hay's in the barn and nobody's babysitting.
That's a good way to put it.
Less babysitting for 2 months, and maybe for the group of 5 as well. Less opportunities for poaching. That
was a ding.
That sound can either mean an angel's getting its wings this time of year, or we have an announcement, or there's a commitment as well. So when you hear that sound over the next 5 hours here on ESPN2, and when we switch over to ESPNU at noon Eastern time, that means something significant has happened. So pay attention and keep your volumes up on your televisions and your tablets. Matt Schick, Jim Moore, Tom Luginbill, and also Tom Van Haren is with us as well, standing by in a studio apartment that he's leasing for the next 5 hours. Tom,
expensive.
Yeah. What's the big story you're following here today, Tom?
Well, you guys mentioned how many prospects are going to sign today, and what I'm watching, really, this could end up being one of the more interesting and intriguing early signing periods we've had so far, especially for the race for the #1 ranked class. We've seen Alabama the last 8 years. They've finished #1 6 times. Well, this year, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, and Georgia, they all have a legitimate shot to finish #1, and it's going to be a really close race. What I think will end up deciding that, every year, guys, we see flips. And we're not talking about Tom Luginbill doing backflips. We're talking about prospects making switches. We've already seen some already today. And I think we're going to see quite a few happen today that could impact that race. LSU commit Jermaine Burton. He's looking at Georgia. There's a few other running back commit for Oklahoma. Jace McClellan. Alabama is after him as well. So we'll see what happens there. And then some of the announcements later, there are some surprises coming with those announcements. There are quite a few prospects where coaches don't know where these kids are headed. Jordan Burch, defensive end, ranked #5 overall. He has not told a soul about where he's headed. Justin Flo, a linebacker, he's going to commit today as well, ESPN 300 5-star. So, Matt, Going to be a really interesting day. It's going to be a long day. A lot could happen from now until the end of the day.
All right, thank you, Tom. And if you hear any breaking news, just wave your arms violently over there so we can see and get to you as soon as possible.
Jordan Burch told his dog.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
You ain't getting anything out of him.
Speaking of Burch, he is one of the announcements that we will have today. 8 announcements today, 7 from the ESPN 300. We've got top uncommitted prospect, 5-star defensive end Jordan Burch. Here on this page, a top 10 prospect. You've got C.J. Stroud, one of the top quarterbacks. Louisville trying to nab that O-line legacy player there. Marcus Dumervil, the nephew of former Cardinals great Elvis Dumervil. You see linebacker Philip Webb from Georgia, Arian Smith, and 4-star cornerback Kendall Dennis will announce out of Lakeland High School in Florida. And again, top 10 prospects. You see Justin Flo from California, 5-star outside linebacker. Is he going to stay out west? And Jordan Burch, top uncommitted prospect, 5-star defensive end, is going to be announcing as well. Let's get into the top 10 overall, whether they're committed or not. And Luke's, the number 1 player, is the top wideout. It's Julian Fleming. He's headed to Ohio State.
Yeah, big, physical, fast, explosive. Got great instincts, ball skills. I think his awareness and his body control when the ball's in the air is supreme. This is one of those guys that's a playmaker at all 3 levels of the passing game, and he's got great size and physicality as well.
Hey, not all the 5-stars are going to current playoff teams. Defensive end Desmond Evans staying in state. Good news for Mack Brown.
Huge news, and it's at a premium position. Now, you talk about length. I got a chance to see this kid just last week playing the state championship game in North Carolina. He is long, he can run, he's got great range. And you see the weight there, he's going to end up being a 255, 260-pounder. You see the explosive first step. Really impressive kid.
Another 5-star defensive end. It's Miles Murphy out of the state of Georgia, and he's heading to Clemson.
See that first step off the edge? Coach just went, ooh. He's a little bit more advanced physically than just to say Desmond Evans is. You see this difference in weight there, already at 270 pounds, but big kids with length, coach, like that, don't move off the ball.
You see the discipline?
Oh, yeah. He's sharp, man.
Look at this kid get off.
Yeah.
How about another defensive line? Brian Bresci, also to Clemson. Nice guy off the field, got a little bit of a mean streak here.
He runs on 93 octane. I think the one thing that stands out about him is his motor. He plays hard, and he's got a mean streak to him. Really explosive, physical, can use his hands, chase. You see the ability to run to the football. Really impressive interior guy.
And Jordan Burch from Columbia, South Carolina. The Gamecocks in on him. Others in the southeastern footprint. Top uncommitted prospect.
Yeah, he's a guy that could end up developing into more of a 5-technique type player. I think he's really physical. Don't know if he's the same level of first step explosiveness as maybe we saw from a Desmond Evans or a Miles Murphy.
So you see Burch, we mentioned Flo, we mentioned Philip Webb. Darnell Washington is likely announcing at Under Armour All-America Week at the end of the month, at the beginning of next month, I should say. Zachary Evans, that should say, is the top running back, also announcing at Under Armour Week. Keely Ringo announcing January 4th. Dante Manning also announcing at the Under Armour All-American game. One-time Oklahoma commit was at Georgia with Ringo on a visit. Arizona State might be a sleeper there as well. Luke, give me a team that you think might be a big mover today.
Oh, a big mover. That's a really good one. I think it's going to be LSU. I think LSU's got a lot of room, and they've got some guys on the board that they're in the leader house with right now. Now, their numbers look like they're done, but those numbers can be deceiving in terms of how you massage your roster, whether it's gray shirting, blue shirting, the transfer portal, putting guys forward or holding guys back. LSU could be in line for a great offensive tackle in Marcus Dumervil, outside linebacker in Philip Webb. They could be the team that I think gives Clemson the biggest push.
Evans as well, but not until likely at Under Armour Week as well. It's going to be fascinating to watch. You see some of these, the rich get richer on a day like today.
They do. What stands out to me is the defensive linemen. You know, 4 of the top players, defensive linemen, the ability to affect the passer. You know, you talked about inside push and then the outside pressure. So you got to have corners and you got to have defensive linemen if you want to survive in today's college football world.
It's so interesting you say that because we continually talk about those premium positions and why they seem to be ranked higher than wide receivers or running backs. Well, you can find a lot of those guys. Oh, yeah. You can't find pass rushers. You can't find 6'1" corners. Those guys are the difference between good and great.
Well, the 6'1" corners,
yeah.
High school coaches put them on offense.
I know.
And they flourish on offense because they can catch the ball. Yeah. Usually the 6'1" corners can't locate the ball or can't catch the ball. Yeah. So when you can find a guy that's committed to playing defense, that loves to play defense, it's the 6'1", 200-pounder with the long arm that can track the ball and find it, man, there's a premium there. Because they've got to go out and cover T. Higgins and Jerry Jeudy and those guys, and that is no small task.
Yeah. Look for Florida today, potentially a mover. They've already flipped Josh Braun, who was an offensive lineman at ESPN 300, flipped from Georgia to Florida, in part because Sam Pittman left Georgia to become the head coach there at Arkansas. So see those coordinator, assistant coaching changes certainly can impact the way the teams are able to close. Look at the 4 states with 49% of the ESPN 300 prospects. Luke's geographically, teams are just at an advantage.
Well, they are when you consider just the sheer population of those states, and then more importantly, the football playing population of those states. You look at the state of California there, Coach, and you're as familiar with it as anybody. They get 38 million people, but there's a significant portion of that population that isn't a football playing population, whereas you got almost 12 million people in Georgia, and it's a huge football playing population.
Well, I spent time in Georgia with the Falcons. I spent years in New Orleans, with the Saints and my dad. So I spent a lot of time down in the Southeast. And then obviously being a West Coast guy, I have a pretty firm comparison. Yeah. In the South, football it's a religion. I mean, it is something that you are brought up to do.
Right.
In California, there's more things to do. It's seasonal. There's distractions. There's other sports. There's other interests. We're down south. I mean, they're grown to go play football. It's just a different mindset.
That was a geography quiz, by the way. That state was Georgia. There, 29 there. College football playoff semifinals mega cast. Luke and Bill, you involved in the mega cast this year?
Yeah, me and Louis Riddick going to do the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl breakdown for Film Room. It's going to be a lot of fun on that one, then leading into the Fiesta Bowl.
Very good. Film Room, Command Center, main telecast. We got a data center as well. I'll be involved with that with Brad Edwards crunching numbers. See the hometown broadcast. We got you covered for the national semifinals. Speaking of which, the college football playoff, all 4 teams built in very different ways. We will run through that over the course of today. Clemson, LSU, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. Miami hoping the college football playoff not in the too distant future. Head coach Manny Diaz will join us with the latest on his recruiting efforts. And a new face, but a familiar face in the SEC, Lane Kiffin. We're going to report from Oxford, check in with the Rebels later on. This is National Signing Day. No movement here in that last hour. Clemson remaining at number 1, trying to finish with the number 1 class for the first time. You see the top 10 there. Bama, Ohio State, LSU, and Georgia rounding out the top 5. Miami trying to lock up a top 25 class after an up and down season, which included a win over ranked Virginia, but a tough loss to FIU. The Hurricanes finished with a record of 6-6, getting set for a bowl game in their first season under Manny Diaz, who joins us now here on National Signing Day. And you look at these class rankings, again, 30th class rank last year, trying to lock up a top 15 class, 8 ESPN 300 prospects at last check for head coach Manny Diaz, who is the aforementioned coach, joins us now. Manny, appreciate the time here on this busy day. How would you describe the challenges of selling recruits on the future of a program when you go through an up and down season like you have?
Yeah, it is a challenge. Big part of that is to be on the right guys, and I think we tried to identify guys early on in the process that held Miami in a high regard, that wanted to be part of getting Miami back to where we think Miami should be, and they've held firm. And the conversations throughout the season, in the contact period, they have been on song. These are guys that want to get in here, they want to get to work, and they want to be part of the solution.
How would you compare the short cup of coffee that you were able to have before the early signing period last year versus what's going on this year here with Miami, actually your first class here with the Canes?
Well, compared to a year ago's class, it's very different. We had a lot more holes in January that we had to fill with transfers. We've had a much more solid class this time around. Guys that we've been able to been on for really more than a year. A couple couple-year process on some of these guys, getting them home, and so it's been good. We felt good about it. We went, we had a quick sprint the last 2 weeks of this contact period, and the reception was good everywhere we went.
Coach, obviously the transfer portal and grad transfers as well have come into the equation when it comes to your overall recruitment of the player. It's not just the high school player or the junior college player. How have you and your staff chosen to integrate that into your evaluation efforts?
That's a great question. We really want to do things. We still want to be a player developmental program. We want to start off with high school guys. Starting off here at home, we obviously are surrounded by tons of talent. Get those guys in that we can get in this program, get in our developmental lifting program, develop those guys. At the same time, we do have the opportunity to examine our roster every year to see where we might have a need for age, a need for experience, a need for a one-year player, a grad transfer. We've had some great success with that the last few years. Of course, we had to go all in on that a year ago because we had so many scholarships left to give out in January. On the other side of this signing day, I suspect there will be a room for a couple of guys at certain positions where we will look at, see if we can have some guys that can improve our 2020 football team.
Transfer portal certainly changing the dynamic of how coaches approach National Signing Day and the signing period. Manny, appreciate the time. Best of luck in the bowl game and locking up this class. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
It's Manny Diaz, head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. Again, sitting there right now with the second highest rated class in the ACC. Looking up at Clemson, you see North Carolina, Georgia Tech. Jeff Collins going to join us later on as well. And Mike Norvell in a little catch-up mode there with Florida State. You think about Miami, and you heard what he said. The thought of Miami not being a perennial power is just mind-boggling. This shouldn't be that hard with what they have locally. What are those challenges?
Well, it is hard. It shouldn't. You say, look, there's so many players around us. It's like Coach Diaz just
Dade
said.
County, Broward County.
But there's also so many teams coming in to try to pluck those guys out. You never know in the mind of a high school player and his family exactly what they're looking for. There may be great players within, a couple miles of University of Miami that want to go to some other school because there's something that really appeals to them about that other program. So it's not necessarily a knock on Miami. It just may be something at another school that is a little more appealing to that player. But it's challenging. I think that, you saw the 30th, now they're 14th. They're going to move up. The longer Manny's there, they're going to show some consistency on the field. He is making his imprint on that program. He said it. He's profiling a certain type of player. He'll get those players. They'll start to build. Success breeds more success.
And I think the challenge also for Miami is, as opposed to, let's just say 25 years ago, is the exposure that these kids have to other programs because of the internet, because of the ability to talk to one another in social media. They're exposed to other programs, and those programs are infiltrating South Florida, whereas 25 years ago, you grew up, you were a Miami fan, right, as a kid, and you weren't exposed to any of those other programs. You didn't hop in your car and get on this campus and get on that campus. So much greater challenges now just because the landscape of recruiting has changed greatly.
So they're a national recruiter. They'll go all over if they need to, and they went up the East Coast to Connecticut to get Tyler Van Dyke. You guys have him as the #2 pocket passer in the ESPN 300.
Yeah, this is a guy that Dan Enos and this staff has targeted, can really rip it. Can throw the football, press the ball vertically. He can drive the ball with power. You see that throw right there. Very poised guy. You see him with some ball handling. Ball comes out. It finishes. Very accurate. Throws a catchable ball. I think when you look at this Miami class, they wanted to target the quarterback position. Most notably, they wanted to target the offensive line. This seems to be an epidemic across college football right now. Every coach and staff I talk to, Coach, I don't know about you. Oh, we got to get more offensive line. We're not very good in the offensive line.
It's hard to get big guys.
It's hard to get big guys. So Jalen Rivers headlines this class. Very, very important in the offensive line for Miami.
Got the running back Jalen Knighton beat out Florida and FSU for him. He actually committed to Miami after the loss to FIU because of what was going on at Florida State. Willie Taggart not filling that job. You mentioned Tyler Van Dyke. 2020's been okay. We'll see how 2021 is impacted there. We've got some announcements coming up here on our National Signing Day coverage. These are in order of appearance. Top uncommitted offensive tackle Marcus Dumervil. E.J. Smith, son of a guy who dabbled in running back. And he tried it out. Emmitt Smith, his son E.J. going to commit with us. later on. Philip Webb, one of the top outside linebackers in the country. C.J. Stroud, will he stay out west? Will he go to the Big Ten? We'll find out together. Arian Smith, the top 10 athlete as well. And again, top 10 uncommitted prospects, Justin Flo from out west in California, number 1 outside linebacker, and Jordan Burch from Columbia, South Carolina. See where he goes. Some of these announcements being played very close to the vest. Craig Hubbard, ESPN National Recruiting Coordinator, joining us here at our National Signing Day coverage. When you think about some of these announcements that we're going to have here, which one or ones intrigue you the most, Hobbs?
Well, Matt, I think the one that really jumped out to me in the beginning is Justin Flo, who a little bit later this afternoon, number 1 rated linebacker in the nation, a 5-star at Upland, California. Now, early on in the process, it seemed like he was a heavy Clemson lead, but they recently offered Trenton Simpson, the ESPN 300 linebacker, which would lead you to believe that they may think they may not get Flo. Oregon has a lot of the momentum, and it could be big for the Ducks to be able to go into California 2 years in a row and land the number 1 ranked player, Calvin Thibodeau, a year ago, and now potentially Flo. But I don't know if there's any one prospect more important to a singular class than Justin Flo and USC. USC is really struggling. It's hard to think about USC not even in the top 25 with their class. They got a late visit from Flo. If they can land him, it will be a big boost to that class. So it'll be interesting to see if they can, as a dark horse, could get him. The other one that jumps out to me is the number 6 ranked receiver, Arian Smith, out of Lakeland High School in Florida. It's a 2-team battle between Bama and Georgia, and it's key because both of those programs can certainly use more wide receiver depth. You may not think it with Alabama because they don't have any seniors, but if Judy, Smith, and Ruggs all leave, or any combination, that is a big chunk of their receiving core. Over 150 receptions between those 3. So Smith can certainly come in if they lose some of those players. And in Georgia, Lawrence Cager will move on. George Pickens was big a year ago. They got Blaylock, but we saw in the SEC title game where they had some injuries and the wide receiver thinness there really showed. So if they could land Smith as well. So both of those are key SEC programs that could use some more talent and depth at that wide receiver position. All
right, Arian Smith going to announce 1 o'clock Eastern on ESPNU, and Justin Flo 2:20 p.m. Eastern time, also on ESPNU. You mentioned guys leaving the West Coast, Craig, and quarterback Bryce Young did just that, going from California out west, committed to SC, and then flipped to Alabama. You've seen him at least once this year on the high school circuit. What impresses you the most about this quarterback?
He is one of the most impressive young men that I have met through this entire cycle. And I'll tell you this, Matt. If Tua decides to leave Alabama early, I truly believe that Bryce Young will be the starting quarterback for Alabama's first game next year. I think that highly of this young man. He doesn't have great stature, but that's fine. We've seen a lot of undersized quarterbacks in college football have success. He's got great pocket presence. What really stands out to me is his poise. Nothing seems to rattle him. He goes to Mater Dei High School in California. They have a rich quarterback tradition. 2 quarterbacks that went to Mater Dei went on to win Heisman trophies. You also think about Matt Barkley, Colt Brennan. But the head coach at Mater Dei, Bruce Rollinson, told me that he has the chance, talking about Bryce Young, to be the best that's ever come through there. And that is certainly saying a lot. A true dual threat. Tremendous arm. He's also can run with his legs and hurt you there. He's a really special young man, I think.
All right, we'll pass along to Nick Saban that you think Bryce Young is going to start on opening day coming up.
I'm helping where I can.
Speaking of Bama, they are one of those teams that are trying to get that number 1 class. You've covered this for a long time. How would you assess the race for number 1?
Well, this is the most competitive race for a number 1 class I have ever seen since we have been doing this. There are legitimately 5 programs that can make a case. With Georgia at number 5, their biggest hurdle right now is they just don't have the numbers. 16 players, but 13 in ESPN 300. Clemson sits at number 1 right now, and they could be tough to unseat just because of the type of quality that they have. All of their ESPN 300 prospects, Matt, rank amongst the top 150 in the nation. But as you mentioned, never count out Alabama. 19 ESPN 300 prospects, more than any program in the country, potentially a 7th number 1 overall class this decade. Ohio State's doing a nice job. They got the #1 overall player in the country committed in Julian Fleming. And then LSU. Everybody knows Ed Orgeron's an outstanding recruiter as a head coach. Now he's out there on the recruiting trail with a potential national title appearance potentially and a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. So watch out for LSU because there is certainly a team with a few pieces out there today, like Philip Webb, who will be announcing with us a little later.
Yeah, likely locking up their first top 5 class under Ed Orgeron. Hobbs, we will catch up with you a little bit later on. Thanks, buddy. Good seeing you again.
Appreciate you guys.
That's Craig Hobbert, National Recruiting Coordinator here for ESPN. These high school prospects looking to get to the postseason with their college teams. It's bowl season. Makers wanted Bahamas Bowl, otherwise known as Greg McElroy's all-expenses-paid Christmas vacation.
And I'm missing it. I'm supposed to be there, but I can't be there. But you know what? It's supposed to rain the whole time.
You're praying for rain, aren't you? Utah State and Kent State as well. It's coming up Friday on the ESPN app. You can watch it there as well. Texas lost a few commits recently. Looked like a top 5 class. Now trying to finish in the top 10. We'll get a live report from Austin.
That highly ranked, I think, is indicative of the quality. It may not have the quantity, but the quality. A lot of in-state guys and a lot of guys that are, ready to come to the University of Texas and get their degree and help us win championships.
Who do you think has the best chance of making an immediate impact?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't know that there's one. I know, the position of need certainly. We're going to need to replace our 2 great receivers that we'll be losing to graduation, and then obviously, if one of these guys can come in at the skill positions and help us in the back end and even at linebacker, I think would be definitely needed.
What has your message been to the recruits after the recent coaching changes to reassure them that everything is fine and on the right track?
Yeah, I don't think the fine and on the right track part is an issue. I think they see our trajectory. We had a bump in the road this year, very young, very injured team. But what you tell them is position coaches want to be coordinators and coordinators want to be head coaches, and to think that you're going to play for the same position coach or same coordinator for your entire college career, that's pretty rare these days. And so, make sure that the university and the head coach and the strength coach are the guys that you want to trust the most, and then obviously the degree and the power of that degree and what it's going to do for you after football.
You recently hired Chris Ash as your new defensive coordinator. How does your personnel on that side of the ball fit his scheme?
It's irrelevant. The scheme is going to fit the personnel. I think you try to fit a square peg in a round hole. That's a recipe for disaster in football. So he'll come in, he'll evaluate. We'll try to get it as closely aligned to his and my nirvana, if you will. But we know that there's going to be some adjustments that need to be made to make sure that your best 11 are on the field.
And what's the latest on the search for an offensive coordinator?
But not much. It's going great. I wanted to make sure that we got this defensive coordinator hired and got it right. Chris was offered multiple Power 5 coordinator jobs, so I wanted to make sure that we got that sewed up. And I've had some preliminary conversations with a bunch of guys on the offensive side of the ball, and we'll continue to do some in-person interviews here throughout the next couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach, for the time. Recruiting has not been an issue. Herman's first full class was ranked in the top 5, a third actually, then 5th, now trying to finish top 10. A dozen ESPN 300 commits from the state of Texas this year, at least entering this week, twice as many as any other team. Tom Herman has left. Alex Loeb is paid to stay there. He's there on National Signing Day here with us. Alex, you mentioned the coordinator changes there. What has been the impact in recruiting with those coaches now gone?
Matt, there hasn't been a giant impact. They're still, as of right now, on pace to have a top 10 class. But keep in mind, they did lose 3 4-star guys who decommitted since the news of the coaching changes became public. But they're still on pace to have right around the same number of ESPN 300 signees as a year ago. So there has been an impact, but it hasn't been major up to this point.
In this recruiting class, they signed 2 quarterbacks. Always good to have depth, and maybe they're learning that the hard way. You have some injury news to report.
Yeah, it's a bittersweet day for one of them. Jaquindon Jackson, the number 2 dual-threat quarterback in the nation. This guy is the highest-rated quarterback signee for Texas since 2009. But the Longhorns and Jackson received some bad news this morning. Jackson's head coach, Reginald Samples of Duncanville High School, announced Jackson's high school career is over with a torn left ACL. It happened in their last playoff game on Saturday. He will now miss their next playoff game. His high school career is over, and he's obviously got a long recovery ahead of him. And this is a guy in Jackson, his legs are everything. A prolific runner, averaged more than 10 yards per carry for his career, 51 rushing touchdowns. So again, sad news for Jaquindon Jackson, but he does have time to recover. Was not expected to make an immediate impact next year.
And the good news, Sam Ehlinger expected to come back next year for Texas
Absolutely.
as well. Alex, thanks so much for the time here.
Thanks.
Live from Austin. This is one of those times where you've got the early signing period, but you're also making coaching changes. How do you keep that together when you have coaches that may have recruited an athlete, and it's all about relationships? That coach leaves. What do you do?
Well, Coach Herman hit it right on the head. You know, you have to have a relationship with the school, understand what the school can do to benefit you for the rest of your life, whether that's in the NFL or that's in a career outside of football. You have to have a relationship with the head coach, especially at a place like Texas. Tom's not going to go anywhere. And the strength coach, because there's usually consistency in those 2 spots. And I think the important thing is to be very upfront with recruits early on and not mislead them into thinking that their position coach or their coordinator could be there their entire career, because as Tom said, those men have aspirations to move up, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you mislead the kid, if you tell him, if you're an assistant coach, I'm going to be here all 4 years. I'm going to be here all 4 years. Now, that's not okay.
Right.
So he hits it head on, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure families appreciate that.
But you also have a head coach who makes a change at defensive coordinator as well. And that's
well,
another
he's trying to make the team better. He's trying to improve their chance of winning, and all these kids want to be a part of winning programs. Now, the first question they're going to have when a change is made is, how do I fit in to the changes that they're making? Is the scheme going to be different? Do they still want me?
Sure.
So you have to reassure them a little bit. But typically, at a place like Texas, you commit to Texas football.
Yeah, and the other way you can combat this is how you assemble your staff in terms of contact and relationship with the student athlete, because you're going to have your area coach, your position coach, your coordinator, your head coach. That's 4 individuals that you're going to have that are going to have an established, ongoing relationship. So if you lose one, you don't lose the whole relationship. Right. That's very, very, maybe in the old days, this was my guy. I recruited this guy, and then all of a sudden, nobody else on the staff has any type of contact with him. Right. Those days are over.
Yeah, you used to, it was an area guy, you recruited your area, and everyone in your area, and you might be a defensive line coach recruiting a wide receiver, and then all of a sudden, you're gone, and where's the relationship with the wide receiver coach? Although you would have one, but now, it's more integrated.
No doubt.
Well, Texas had good enough relationships. They were able to recruit 2 quarterbacks. Sure. You heard Alex Loeb mention Jaquindon Jackson. Sad news with the torn ACL, going to be out for a while. Hudson Card, though, also part of the fold. What can you tell us about him?
So first of all, get as many quarterbacks as you can and worry about what you're going to do with one of them when they want to transfer later. But in the interim, you want to create an environment of competition. And I think Texas has done that with 2 players that have dual threat mobility. Hudson Card is the better passer of the 2. Great quick release, extremely accurate. One of those kids that's won a lot of football games, and he's a deceptively good athlete. You look at him, you're like, all right, this guy's going to be a thrower. He's going to divvy the ball around, and then all of a sudden he takes off, and he can really make some things happen with his legs. With Jaquindon Jackson, Jaquindon might be one of those guys that could play any skilled position on the field, offensively or defensively. He gives the coaching staff a lot of options if he doesn't develop at the same rate from a quarterback perspective. And Bijan Robinson, who Coach, of course, couldn't mention because he was not signed and in the fold yet. If you talk about an impact player, that was a position a year ago that was so decimated by injury and a lack of depth that Robinson, once the pen goes to paper, would be that guy.
That might be the reason that they lost four-star Ty Jordan, running back, went from Texas to Utah, and a little bit of a flip there. Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, over the last 48 hours, flipped from Texas to TCU as well. You look at Texas and where they sit in terms of the Big 12. Well, right now, 12 ESPN 300 prospects sitting there atop the league. Oklahoma not too far behind. They never are. Followed by the aforementioned Horned Frogs, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State. Not pictured there. We're going to get to Baylor here. Baylor, ESPN 300, 1 commit, 14 overall. Baylor's not going to be the type of program that's going to be rated very high, but Matt Rhule continues to hit the recruiting trail and cast a vision and sell kids on what he's building there at Baylor. Well,
and what is the Big 12 trying to do as a conference? They're trying to get better on defense. They're trying to find front people, all right? Top-graded player in Baylor's class is a defensive lineman in James Sylvester. Very, very important to continue to build the depth on that side of the football, because that's where the core of the success of your football team is going to come. In a high-flying circus act like that conference offensively, you got to come up with guys on that side of the ball. Matt Rhule, that's where his focus is at.
And Matt develops players.
Yes.
So, you know, his recruiting ranking may not always be at the top, but he's going to find guys with potential, guys with length, guys that, just like you said, that can play some great defense and develop them into types of players that get them where they got this year. I mean, and when you have success like they had this year, and as you said, he's presenting a vision.
Right.
All right, kids buy into it. You have to remember, a lot of these young men, they grew up when Baylor was really struggling, and that resonates in their mind. So he's fighting that as well, and he's winning.
1-11 to 11-1 in 2 years.
Yeah, he's winning.
That'll help sway some kids. Speaking of finding guys and developing, Matt Campbell and Iowa State. Not necessarily best player, but right player, Lugs, for the program.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that identifies the fit, right? You're going to have a blue-collar mentality. You're going to give great effort. Obviously, you're going to have to be a good football player, but you need to fit in to their environment and their culture. This class headlined by not one, but two quarterbacks. Hunter Decker's big, strong, left-handed kid that can really stroke the football. But they've cast a wide net, too. Obviously, you're not going to be able to recruit an entire 85-man scholarship roster from in-state, so you got to go into other people's backyards. What I think that Matt Campbell has done, Coach, is he has improved the perception of Iowa State football to the point where when they walk through the door in the high school, they walk into the home, and that logo's on their lapel, on their chest plate, it's identifiable. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it wasn't.
No, we talk about them. We talk about them every Saturday.
We talk about them.
And these people, these kids watch these shows and they hear us talking about it. They see a cool uniform now. They see a young coach who looks good, presents himself well, has energy. They see a team that's playing well, that has talent everywhere. And then, as you said, what they've done is they have a profile of the type of athlete that they want, and that's what they go get. And I think they do a really nice job of recognizing the guys that they have a chance at and putting their resources into them, and the guys that, you know what, we're not going to get that guy no matter what, and saying, hey, let's put our resources somewhere else.
And the ability to project, because when you're having to recruit that guy that maybe isn't college ready, you're making a projection. You're saying, all right, we think this guy 2 to 3 years down the line is going to be this. Well, he may not be that just yet.
No.
But that is a real talent in player evaluation, because you're having to project height and weight and speed and improvement and all these different things
for a 15-year-old.
Yeah, a 15-year-old.
Yeah, it's hard.
They have Brock Purdy, obviously, quarterback there at Iowa State. His brother, Chubba Purdy, committed to Louisville. Florida State trying to sway him as well. We'll continue to monitor that throughout the day. Speaking of the Big 12 and the footprint, again, Texas obviously plays a huge role. Captain Obvious statement there. You see Oklahoma, you see Iowa, Kansas, West Virginia, the outline, just the challenges of recruiting out there, certainly within the league.
You just look at the numbers. That tells you right now how difficult it is if you're not residing in the state of Texas in the Big 12.
And you know what you need to have is guys on your staff that have connections to the high schools in Texas, so they can walk in. When you go into a high school in Texas, it's different. Now, especially the big high school, you kind of got to kiss the ring.
Yeah.
You know? These are some of the best high school footballs in the country. They've done great things, amazing facilities. You got to get in there. You've got to pay your respects in order to get access to the players.
Instead of getting them to kiss the ring, Matt hired them.
Yeah, that's right. And that's smart.
Matt Rhule hired them.
You have to have that in with the big-time programs.
Well, speaking of big-time programs, let's go out west. Oh, there's a chime there. We have a flip in the Pac-12. What happened here, Tom Van Haren?
I didn't get my wings there.
No wings for you. No.
Okay. Well, yeah, we do have a flip. We mentioned it at the top of the hour that these were going to happen. Now, Arizona State has flipped wide receiver Johnny Wilson from Oregon. It's a big get for them. Literally, he's a 6'6", 220-pound receiver. He's out of Calabasas High School in California. Arizona State, now they've got a new offensive coordinator. They have their quarterback in Jaden Daniels, and now they're starting to add some talent and some playmakers around him. Johnny Wilson's going to be a huge target for him, and he's going to join Chad Johnson Jr., son of former NFL wide receiver Chad Johnson, as receivers in this class. A big get for Herm Edwards and his staff.
So high school teammate of Jermaine Burton, who's committed to LSU as well. There's been some whispers about that, some visits, and maybe Arizona State in there as well. So there's a lot there to digest.
It doesn't surprise me, though. Oregon just lost their offensive coordinator. He's the new head coach at UNLV.
That's right.
Arizona State lost their offensive coordinator.
Just hired
someone. Yep. A well-known guy from Boise State who all you have to do is throw on Boise State film. You say, "Oh man,
guys are pretty good."
They flip it, they wing it around.
Yeah.
They know how to highlight receivers. So it doesn't surprise me at all. Especially, listen, you get Herm Edwards in the room with any family and kid, you always got a chance when you're with Herm.
It's like a Mac Brown.
Oh,
wow.
And you got the young quarterback to build around now, and they're in California heavy, so
they're playing good defense.
Yeah.
And they've got to replace their coordinator.
Yeah.
They will.
Yeah.
So.
We'll see if Arizona State can lock up a top 25 class today. We'll talk to Herm Edwards later on our National Signing Day 5 class under Ed Ogeron. And Georgia looking for their 4th straight top 5 class. What separates those teams and conferences that compete for top classes and championships from those that don't? You hear it all the time from guys who played the game, from guys who donned the pads, from guys who don't look like me. They always say the game is won up front, in the trenches. So let's put our hands in the dirt here and find out if it's more than just a cliche. From the start of the college football playoff era, so 2014 to 2019, that's 6 recruiting cycles, the SEC signed 235 offensive and defensive linemen that were in the ESPN 300. That averages out to nearly 17 top 300 linemen per SEC team over that span. The ACC and Big Ten averaged less than half of that. The Pac-12, 73 in that span. The Big 12 signed roughly a quarter of the SEC's number when broken down per team. In fact, Alabama signed 45 top 300 linemen in that span, the same number as the entire Big 12. Now, let's admit, evaluating high school athletes can be an inexact science. So given that, let's take it a step further and go from college to the pros. From 2014 to now, the SEC has had 44 offensive and defensive linemen drafted in the 1st or 2nd round. The Big Ten has produced half as many, but look at the bottom. Just 15 for the Pac-12 and 9 for the Big 12. Now, what about specific programs from those leagues, those traditional blue blood types? From 2016 to 19, Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State each had at least 5 linemen drafted in the first 2 rounds. During that same span, Texas has had 1. USC, none. In fact, it's been 4 years since the Trojans had a lineman drafted in the 1st or 2nd round. Now, this is all just one part of the story, but if you want to know why the Pac-12 is currently enduring the longest national championship drought among the Power 5 leagues, 15 years, or why the Big 12 has yet to win a college playoff game, or why schools like USC and Texas have yet to make the playoff, maybe you just need to read between the lines of scrimmage. Thank you for that report. No doubt linemen are important. The teams that have signed the most linemen in 2016 to 2019 recruiting classes, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Ohio State have all made the college football playoff in that span. You said it is part of the story. How big of a part of the story is that, Tom?
I think the numbers tell the story. Those numbers don't lie, and I think it's very easy for regional bias to be the low-hanging fruit. Oh, well, you don't like the West Coast, you don't like the Southwest. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with populace. where are the concentrated areas where you're finding the most players at those positions? And you can see the regional footprints. You can study it throughout the country. It is very real because the game is built from the inside out. And if you want to have a championship level team, Coach, I remember last year we were on our second signing day, and we're sitting here at the set, and you were on the field at the national championship game. I said, I've coached at UCLA for a long time in the Pac-12, and I walked out on the field and looked at Alabama and Clemson, and I have not seen college football teams look like that.
Right.
Up front.
No, I called my dad. I said, Dad, you should see Alabama. You should see Clemson. Look, you win in the trenches. I mean, we all love to see, the throws downfield and the quarterbacks that can run all over the place and the great defensive, backs that can cover. But you win football games in the trenches. You always have and you always will. And that means big, athletic, smart, tough, active players. And they live down south. That's where they live, or they live in the Midwest. There's not as many of those guys out west.
Correct.
And Tom, one of the problems that the West Coast is having is that Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, teams like that now are starting to come into, let's say, California and get those guys. Now, there's two teams out west that are doing a decent job of developing offensive linemen, bigger guys, and that's Utah and that's Washington. And they still have some guys, but there are some teams that are really struggling to hold on to guys in their area that can make a difference up front. They go to these powerhouses down south or in the Midwest.
Oregon's doing a decent job.
Well, yeah, and you've got Mario.
Utah and Mario.
Yeah, well, Mario, he's the SEC guy.
That's the mindset.
That's right. And hopefully the perception nationally of Oregon can start to change a little bit because we still see him, I think, a little bit as that high-flying, throw the ball over the field, Oregon team of the past, but they're not. They run the football, and they play really good defense. And so I think you're going to see some big guys, and they've got a heck of an offensive line right now, wanting to go play for Mario Cristobal.
And Kayvon Thibodeau, #1 player last year, stays out west with Oregon as well. So those are important. But we showed the footprint earlier, right, with the SEC. You said those guys are down south. So what does the Pac-12 and to some extent the Big 12, what do they do? How do they combat that?
Well, I think a couple things. I think that they need to continue to attack the Polynesian kids. Yes. There is some size there. They need to go into those areas and continue to pull kids.
And then you got to beat Utah on them.
You've got to beat Utah, which is really, really hard. Kyle does such an amazing job. And I don't know if you can infiltrate the South and bring them out west. We were talking about this before the show. It's really hard for a Southern kid from the South to come out west. I've had a few try to do that, and it's
slow pace to fast pace is hard.
It's hard, and you know what it is. And I've said family on this show a number of times. It's hard for a Southern family to let their kids go to L.A. because they don't know L.A. Right. They don't know what it's really like out there. So it's a tough decision. Boy, they're in a real bind. I know this, if there's a kid in their area that is, in 8th grade, 6th grade that looks like he's a player, they better get on him now. You better start developing that relationship.
Right, you better get on him, and then you're still going to have to battle all those folks, as you said, from the SEC, from the Big Ten.
Maybe you've got him already. Maybe you've got him in your clutches.
Now you got to start looking at 8th graders.
I just heard a little thing in my ear.
Yeah, we did. What was that? Yeah. What was that? All right, look at the bottom of the screen. Oh, we've got some announcements again. We can't always see the bottom of the screen, but it's happening on the bottom of your screen. You have a little advantage ahead of us here. The bowl games, maybe that was the chime as well. Bowl games coming up. You got the Celebration Bowl, Cheribundi Boca Raton Bowl, SMU, and Florida Atlantic. Conference USA champs taking on SMU out of the American. Boise State and Washington. Chris Peterson's final game as head coach of Washington before handing it off to defensive coordinator Jimmy Lake. First of 8 live announcements coming up. They're fired up. Marcus Dumervil, the big guy in the middle of your screen, the top uncommitted offensive lineman, top 10 offensive tackle. Where's he headed? SEC, ACC. He's going to tell us. They'll finish clapping after the break. Coming up.
And he's got great feet. Our little font there is blocking him. But this is a kid that can bend. He's flexible. All of the things that you're looking for in terms of length. But where I get excited about him, Coach, is there's a lot of technical development that still has yet to take place that gives him a very high ceiling for the next level.
And you saw length and you saw the foot athleticism. and a guy that wants to work, he'll develop into a great player.
Again, if the name sounds familiar, his Uncle Elvis played
Uncle
at
Elvis.
Louisville. His Uncle Elvis, yes, played at Louisville. They need some game changers on the offensive line at Louisville. We'll see if he decides to stay with the family there. Florida, LSU, some of those teams as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see where Marcus Dumervil decides to go. Tom Van Haren joining us. What can you tell us about what we're about to see here?
You guys mentioned his Uncle Elvis. Marcus told me that he's been a part of the process, giving him some advice here and there. He obviously went to Louisville. Florida trying to sell Marcus on the in-state aspect, staying home in the state of Florida. You guys mentioned he's from St. Thomas Aquinas, a big-time program there. They're trying to sell him on staying home and getting other prospects in the state to come to the University of Florida. And then LSU. He grew up watching the Tigers. He said now that staff selling him on winning big. This season has been a big recruiting tool for LSU and that staff, so we'll see what happens. But those three schools, different reasons, trying to push and land Marcus Dumervil.
And meanwhile, Marcus Dumervil is sitting there at St. Thomas Aquinas going, just come to me. I'm going to tell you here.
Yeah,
just
hurry
a
up.
minute. Again, look at his final schools. You see Louisville, LSU, Florida, Oklahoma has been in the mix as well. Top 10 offensive tackle Marcus Dumervil joining us live here from St. Thomas Aquinas. Marcus, really appreciate you sharing this moment with us. The moment is now yours.
No problem.
Where will you be headed to school?
First, I would like to thank God for this moment. None of this would be possible. I would like to also thank St. Thomas, the school, the faculty, staff, my athletic director, Coach George Smith, my principal, Dr. Aloma. I also want to say thank you to my teammates. They helped me and they pushed me to become the person and the leader I am today. My position coach, Coach Wilson. I would like to say thank you for him to holding me to an elite standard and putting me in a position to dominate week after week. And certainly, I would like to thank my head coach, Coach Roger Harriet, for instilling the winning mentality, and truly honored to play for a coach like him. And last, I would like to thank ESPN for coming out to film this, me and my family. Now, before I sign my national letter of intent, I would like to share with the viewing audience that I am excited, humbled, blessed, and extremely grateful to stand here before you and receive a full academic and athletic scholarship. I'm overwhelmed with emotions. This is a hard moment because it's been a long journey. I have dealt with issues on and off the field. Physically and mentally things, but those moments help build character. And with that being said, I'd like to thank my mom for being there by my side always and believing in me, and my dad for making the right decisions on and off the field, in and out the classroom. Although I stand here ready to sign, it's not just me signing today. It's a team behind me, and they should be proud of me, the Dumervil families and the St. Thomas family. We pride ourselves on a culture of independence and a work ethic. With that being said, I would like to say thank you to the 5-time Pro Bowler and future Hall of Famer, my Uncle Elvis. In my opinion, he's the greatest. He's the greatest pass rusher in NFL history and the shortest to have 100 sacks. Having a mentor like this in my corner was priceless and gave a competitive advantage many other athletes didn't have. So again, I'd like to say thank you to my uncle, and I appreciate all you've done for me. Now, before I sign the letter of intent, I would like to inform the world at this moment that this moment would not be possible if it weren't for this one person. And this one person is my dad, Paul Dumervil. To give you an idea what type of mentality he has, he told me, son, if you think you're the best, you need to enroll in the best high school. You need to be coached by the best, trained by the best, and recruited the most. It wasn't always a smooth and easy path, but by the grace of God, He made things happen. So thank you. Thank you for the confidence you instilled in me. Thank you for making me practice extra at a lot of the leagues outside the house, times I didn't want to. And thank you for helping me overcome all my fears. And because of you, I'm signing my national letter of intent today. And to continue, and to my community, Lauderdale Lakes and Broward County, I will make you proud and represent you dearly. And with that being said, I'll be attending the University of LSU.
Marcus Dumervil agreeing to sign with LSU. You got the purple bow tie. Where'd you find that bow tie, Marcus?
Yeah. You got to ask my dad.
Very good. You pick LSU. What was the reasoning behind the decision?
You know, just an opportunity to come play for a national championship. And you know, just the culture, being on the staff, being a part of a staff with that type of pedigree, and Coach O and Coach Craig, really is an honor to play for those guys, and I just can't wait to get to campus and help win the next national championship.
The success this program had this year, how much of a factor did that play?
It's played a part. It's played a part, a big part. As you can see, Joe Burrow's done a fantastic job in every game, and after every achievement and award he gets, he's thanking the offensive line, because without them, he wouldn't be in the situation he is now. So, and that really shows a lot. And Coach Craig, James Craig, the offensive line coach, has really done a fantastic job with the offensive line. Marcus,
you mentioned your uncle Elvis, who played at Louisville. You obviously had to say no to the school that was trying to get you with those family ties. What was the best advice your uncle gave you?
He was supportive. He wasn't pushing the legacy or anything like that, but he was very supportive, and he was gonna stand beside me on whatever decision I made, and that was about it.
Marcus Dumervil, the first ESPN 300 offensive lineman commit for LSU in this class, and it's a big one. Marcus, thanks for sharing this time, and congratulations to you.
All right.
That's Marcus Dumervil, the newest member of the LSU signing class. Certainly going to get a bump here, the third highest ranked offensive lineman commit for LSU under Coach Ed Orgeron.
Yeah, you know, it makes me wonder if he took a long look at that Heisman acceptance speech, and the latter part of it with Joe Burrow addressing Ed Orgeron personally should be on a reel in the LSU football building from a recruiting standpoint. Listen, we talked when we came on air that one of the programs we thought could gain a lot of ground today, that still had some room to do so, was LSU. It starts with a premium position.
Oh, they just got a really great one. What a great kid. Classy, mature for his age. Love that he thanked people. Who wouldn't want to play for Coach O?
Right.
You watch the way that he conducts himself after every game, and the way that he treats his players, and the family feel, and the camaraderie, and of course the success. That's a great place to be.
Pretty cool. Again, LSU getting Marcus Dumervil to commit. That national letter of intent on its way. Look at the St. Thomas Aquinas. Look, it's a powerhouse. There's a reason other schools go into the state, and specifically that county and that school. Notable signees this class. Pretty heavy hitters here.
Well, Coach was talking in the break about, you know, recruiting that school, and there's some schools that you go into and it's just cool. You're like, this is kind of cool.
No, I went in there a couple times, and the coaches, the administration, you know, it's a classy place. You know, they're about the kid. They're about helping them get to the place that is the best fit for them. And the coaches are active. The parents are active. I think sometimes we overlook the role of the parent. The role of the parent is so paramount to all these decisions, but that's a great school to recruit out, because you know you're getting a tremendous kid for your program.
And they understand expectation level.
Sure do.
They understand what is going to be expected and what the standard is, so that, and you hear coaches talk about that all the time. We want kids from successful programs.
Well, you heard Marcus there talk about his offensive line coach in high school setting the standard for excellence.
Right.
When you're a college football coach, you want to hear those words. It demonstrates to you that not only does the school demand it, but the young man understands it.
Standards, structure, a lot working at St. Thomas Aquinas, and their advantage now. O-line coach James Craig and at Orgeron reaping the benefits there, doing the work there in Fort Lauderdale. He's the first of many announcements that we will carry today. Mentioned another legacy player. You had Marcus with his uncle Elvis. How about E.J. Smith and his father Emmitt Smith? Will E.J. follow in his father's footsteps? I'll tell you who Emmitt Smith was during the break. Philip Webb, C.J. Stroud as well. Here are the times. Again, we are going to be on ESPN 2 until noon Eastern time. So one more announcement on ESPN 2 coming up. That's E.J. Smith. And then the final 3 hours, we will be on ESPNU, and that will be capped off by the top uncommitted prospect, defensive end Jordan Burch out of Columbia, South Carolina. Clemson recruiting cycles since this program has had a top 25 class. So a pretty remarkable turnaround there for Georgia Tech. Again, overhaul the offensive schemes. That'll certainly broaden your player pool a little bit more. And in Atlanta, that's where Jeff Collins joins us now here on National Signing Day. Jeff, appreciate your time. What do you think is resonating so well in recruiting this year for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Since we've gotten here, we've embraced Atlanta, being a part of the 404, one of the top 5 academic schools in the country, and just the energy is infectious with our coaching staff. We're very aggressive on the recruiting trail. We got a lot to sell here in Atlanta at Georgia Tech, and we're not ashamed to do it. We're out there beating the bushes and trying to get the best of the best to come join us here in Atlanta.
This program required a major overhaul, simply beginning with the change in offensive philosophy. That is nothing new. I'm not breaking any news to you, Jeff. How would you describe the process to turn this program over?
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of the most historic transitions in the last 40 years of college football, inheriting a triple option system, roster built to run the triple option, and we've taken it. We had a small senior class that were absolutely amazing in helping us build the culture here, make the transition. We played a ton of young guys. I think 95% of all the returning production, is freshmen or sophomores. So just excited about what we've got coming back. And then we add one of the top 2 recruiting classes in school history signing today. The future's really bright here in Atlanta.
Coach, this is your first full recruiting cycle, so you're up against it a year ago, just having taken the job. Now all of a sudden you've had a chance to lay down your blueprint for the entire year with your staff. Describe the differences between first arriving in Atlanta and then being able to take a breath and implement that blueprint over the course of a year.
Yeah, we were able to close last January with some really good players. We got Gatorade State Player of the Year. Jemias Griffin joined us last February. We got a bunch of key transfers to come in that had been 4-star players, top 100 players in the country, decided with this new day and age of the transfer portal to return back home to Atlanta, to the state of Georgia. And just seeing the energy and the culture that we're building, people are gravitating to it. We have an open door policy with all the high school coaches in the area to come to watch us practice, watch us work out, see all the innovative things that we're doing here in the 404, and it's resonating with a lot of people, and just excited about what we've got, the staff that we've got, and all the talent that we've been able to bring into this program. I think there's a stat that over half of the top 35 players that have ever signed here at Georgia Tech will be on the roster next year. So, the future's bright, and we're excited to coach them.
How instrumental has Waffle House been in your recruiting efforts?
I was sitting here drinking a nice cold right here, but it started the day there, and it's just it's founded by Georgia Tech graduates. All the upper level of management at Waffle House is Georgia Tech. We live in a state that some of the best high school coaches and some of the best high school players are from this great state. There's 400 Waffle Houses in the state of Georgia, and we understand that there's a school 90 minutes northeast of of us from downtown Atlanta, and a lot of the people in this state really like them as a brand and a program. But the thing that we've got going for us is everybody in the state of Georgia loves Waffle House, and I'm one of them as well. And just, getting people to buy into the brand, the culture of Georgia Tech football, and if you can, integrate yourself with one of the iconic brands and one of the greatest restaurants in all of the world in Waffle House and Georgia Tech, I think that's pretty cool.
Hey, Coach, when I visited with you guys in training camp in August, you were so excited in your office to point out the window at this little white box that was going back and forth on the field. And you're like, look, Tom. I'm like, what is that? You guys have a robot that paints your field. So my question to you is, who's the next engineer in this recruiting class that's going to design your field painting robot?
There's a bunch of them. We're one of the top technological schools in America, and we try to be innovative. We try to be outside of the box in everything that we do. And Tom, firsthand being around us, we try to bounce a lot of great ideas and, be very creative in everything that we do. And I think that resonates, with people that we're trying to recruit, and it resonates with the players that we are blessed to coach every single day here in Atlanta.
Enjoy the drink and enjoy your day. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate the time here on National Signing Day.
Thanks, guys. Go Jackets.
There you go. That's Jeff Collins, head coach at Georgia Tech. And again, you see some of these kids that Georgia Tech bringing in. ESPN 300 defensive back Miles Brooks is there. Bryce Gowdy is there as well.
So 2 quarterbacks in the class. Jeff Sims was not expected to be involved in this class. He was a longtime Florida State commit, Under Armour All-American. That is a huge get out of the state of Florida for Georgia Tech. And then we talked about premium positions and what you're looking for with those positions. There are 2 corners that stand at least 6'1" in this class for Georgia Tech.
Big long arm.
Big long arm corners, and everybody's trying. How do you match up with T. Higgins? How do you? That's the challenge right now, and it's one of those deals you're starting to see. Listen, academically, it's tough there, and you can get them in. It's hard to keep them in.
Well, it's hard to get them in. It's hard to keep them in.
Yeah.
But, a degree from that school, and it's a unique kid that goes there with unique interests. And as he said, they're innovative, they're creative. Hats off to them. Not a great record, but has set a vision and a course for this program, and to have the 21 ranked recruiting class coming off of that record, it just says so much about that staff, and you feel the energy. I mean, he's in. There's no doubt he is 100% in, and I'm sure his staff is as well.
Yeah.
When he came on board, where they have 12 scholarship running backs and no scholarship tight ends.
Yes, correct.
I mean, that's a little bit of a challenge. That I think I would agree with the biggest overhaul in 40 years in college football. And you look at where Georgia Tech sits, 4th in the ACC. We'll talk North Carolina. We'll talk with Mack Brown later on. We already chatted with Manny Diaz. We'll chat with Dabo Swinney in a little bit. What about Florida State? Florida State has been a team that year after year has been in the top 10 of these class rankings. After a year and a half, Willie Taggart gone, Mike Norvell in from Memphis. Short window to try and cobble together this class, but what do you make of Florida State and maybe their short-term future?
Well, I think they've got a tremendous amount of talent. They have big guys.
Yes.
They have skill guys. I think they just need someone that can come in there and create a culture of discipline and toughness, develop confidence, accountability. I think that Coach Norvell is this guy. I think he's tremendous. He's young. His personality fits with the modern athlete. He's a tremendous offensive mind. He's hired a good staff. Kids are going to want to play for him. They know it's going to be fun. They know he's going to be creative. I think they're going to make a big jump because he's going to hold that talent accountable to a certain standard. You've seen him do it. I competed against him when he was at Arizona State as the offensive coordinator, and he was tough to defend, very tough to defend.
They're going to finish outside the top 10 of the class rankings for the 3rd straight year, but you're hoping, Lugs, it's not the 3rd straight year they don't sign a quarterback.
Well, and it's not going to be. They've got one in the fold right now. They're hoping to maybe pull in a second one. And listen, let's look at the reality of this. You're up against it here for the early signing period. Then they're going to go into January, and they're going to realize there's going to be some residual guys out there. It's going to be a great opportunity for them to come off the dead period and hit the ground running. But if you're looking at their class right now and you're saying 14 verbal commitments, almost half of them are in the ESPN 300. That's one heck of a nucleus to start off with moving forward. And then a year from now, maybe you start looking at them the way we just discussed North Carolina or Georgia Tech the first full calendar year. maybe they're one of the storylines next year in recruiting.
Well, I think they will be one of the storylines in recruiting, but I also think they'll be one of the storylines as we watch college football and the season develop next year because, like I said, they have talent.
They have athletes.
You watched the Boise State-Florida State game earlier.
I had that game. Yeah.
Okay. And you know what I texted you?
That's right.
The talent disparity to me watching on TV was really amazing.
Yeah.
And yet Boise State, because of their toughness, their discipline, their belief in what they do, the way they coach their players, they ended up finding a way with a freshman quarterback to win that game on the road at Florida State. You know, remember, the venue was changed, so a lot of things. So I think Mike coming in there with his personality and the way he affects these players, I think Florida State is poised for a big jump with the talent they have.
So Florida State, in the midst of trying to flip a commit, Chubba Purdy, brother of Iowa State quarterback Brock Purdy, currently committed to Louisville. Mike Norvell and Florida State trying to flip him back to Louisville. You see Mike Norvell in his first year, Scott Satterfield now in his first full recruiting class cycle. But we saw if you're going to have a short window to recruit in that early signing period like he had last year coming on board at Louisville, at least you can make up for it by showing a good product on the field. And the momentum on the field with Louisville was unmistakable.
Coach, I don't know if any coach in America that's coming off of getting signed a year ago and then having their first full year has generated more equity in themselves in terms of how they're perceived than Scott Satterfield has. Because this was a team that you go into the season with and you say, they're going to be a dumpster fire. This team's not talented. They're undisciplined. They don't have depth. And now all of a sudden, he's completely changed that dynamic and how they're perceived.
Well, it's about changing the mindset of the player first. It's about instilling a discipline that leads to a confidence that leads to production on the field, belief in one another, in what you're trying to do. And Scott's been able to do that quickly. And then all of a sudden, recruits see that and they go, I want to be a part of that. I like where that's headed. You know, parents say, hey, I like this head coach. I like what he's doing with these teams. I want my kid to play for him. You know, you mentioned when we talk about what the early signing period does and the effect, and you talk about flipping kids, it's really hard to flip them now because so much of your time during the season is spent on game planning. You're recruiting. Sure. You're focusing on your next opponent and your own team. You don't have as much time to try to flip a kid. Now, you know, in the old days, you had time. Now, you just don't have time to flip them.
Louisville was able to get a former Florida and FSU commit, Josh Griffiths, defensive lineman there as well from IMG Academy. So we will monitor that as well. The bowl season, Central Michigan, San Diego State, FIU, Arkansas State, App State, and UAB bowl season coming up Saturday. That's on ESPN. Verbaled to Louisville. But then said, you know what, I'm going back to Florida State. I've committed to them before. I'm going to go back to Florida State. And he did. Florida State sitting there in the top 25. He's out of IMG Academy. Matt Schick, Jim Moore, former UCLA head coach, and also National Recruiting Director Tom Luganville. We see those numbers, and you saw on the right side of the screen, number of commits, number of ESPN 300 signed. You think, well, you have a certain number of scholarships, 85, so okay, you'll take 25 this class, and because you got X amount of players leaving. It's not that easy, and you know this firsthand. Roster management. How does a coach handle that?
It's a full-time job, and you need help. And you need help from someone on your staff that's not a coach, that can really pay attention to the board and to what's happening around the country. And I think you also have to have the pulse of your team. You have to understand if you may lose a guy to the transfer portal, or a guy may be deciding that he's going to come out early and enter the draft. You've got to be aware of what's going on around the country, and if you have a chance to maybe snag a player out of the transfer portal that can help you immediately. But you go back to what Tom Herman said. He wants to be a program that develops his players. They all want to be teams that develop their players. I think that in the NFL, we always want to be a program, an organization that developed our players, but you have to be willing to say, you know what, this guy can really help us. So you're constantly massaging it. You're constantly paying attention to it because it changes daily. Things just changed immediately right there for Florida State. I mean, that's the world we live in, and it happens. So you have to be ready to adjust on the move.
Well, and from a fan perspective, you know, we scroll through those classes, and we're showing you the players that have signed and the players that have verbally committed, and you start to realize all of the different dynamics that go along with roster management in terms of who counts when. So you have initial counters. You have what's called gray shirting. You have what's called blue shirting. So you could take player or team A, and it appears that they've got 14 verbal commitments. However, 2 of those 14, you don't know it, but 2 of those 14 are going to blue shirt. They're going to count towards next year's class. All right, so now they have 12. But last year they had 5 blue shirts that are going to count against this class. So now they have 17 minus 25. That's how many you have remaining. And it is this constant, to your point, it's this constant massaging of having somebody, whether it's football ops, player personnel, compliance, that is helping you manage, okay, when are our mid-years coming in? Do we have a grad transfer coming in? When is our transfer portal? Are we going to withhold some scholarships? I know some programs that are not taking 2s and 3s in this class that they don't get the top guy on their board, and they're going to wait till the spring and summer for the transfer portal.
And they probably are teams that have the depth where they can do that.
Yes.
Not everybody has the depth on their team where they can say, we're not going to take 2 or 3 on our board because we didn't get 1. You know, we're going to take 2 or 3 because we need guys. It's funny. So just the other day, I get a call from one of my ex-UCLA players who played as a freshman a couple of plays, and he is trying to get another year of eligibility. He was initially a walk-on, got a scholarship. He won't know until tomorrow. So he won't know, but neither will UCLA know whether or not they've got his extra scholarship or not. So the ruling comes down tomorrow, not today. So, you know, everybody's on pins and needles all the time of what's going on with your roster, but hey, it makes it fun, I guess. Stressful.
But in terms of that massaging of the roster, I love that phrase, right? Those coaches are so good at that. But there are sometimes you recruit a player and you realize he's not what you thought he was.
Right.
Or he's not developing the way you hoped he would. And so that massaging has to happen of, hey, you might want to think about going someplace else.
Massage him on out?
Massage him out of there. What's that process?
In my opinion, you only get one chance to do that, and that's when you come in as a new head coach. Otherwise, you start to lose a lot of credibility. I think you make a commitment to the kid, you make a commitment to the family, he makes a commitment to you. Commitments are commitments, you stick with them. When you come into a new program, and you're maybe changing the philosophy, then you can go ahead and you can tell a kid, hey, listen, we've watched you. You know, you maybe fit in this system, but you're not going to fit in this system. If you really want to play football, it might be in your best interest to go somewhere else, and we're going to help you. Now, the transfer rules now make it a little bit easier than it did in those days. But if you start recruiting kids and then you start trying to push them out of your program, you lose credibility fast. Now, here's the other thing you have to pay attention to is there's these, you know, the injury, the guys that retired injured. You know, we're seeing a lot of guys with head injuries retiring injured, or
medical retirement.
Medical retirement. Injured retirement.
Right.
Thank you for
medical retirement.
I didn't do a great job of massaging the roster. Medical retirement. So there's just a lot of factors.
Well, the other thing too is you mentioned being the new coach. There is a rule in place under the NCAA guidelines where you have a time period from the time you took the job to a certain extent where you're allowed to, if you have to remove a guy or a guy's going to go elsewhere or you are no longer going to have him part of your team, he can do that, remain on scholarship, finish out his degree, and not count against your numbers. So a Mike Norvell, a Sam Pittman, an Eli Drinkowitz, they're examining their current roster, seeing who's buying in, who's not buying in, guys that fit, guys that don't fit. You're not taking away a scholarship, but it allows you some freedom. So the kid can move on, or he can stay there and not play football, not count against your numbers, and still get his degree on scholarship.
They're tough discussions to have.
They
are. You're dealing with young men that have dreams, and those are really difficult discussions.
Fans always wonder, hey, you only had room for this many. How did you sign that many? Well, we might, there might be some
blue shirt
thing.
Gray shirt, red shirt.
Blue shirt versus gray shirt, for those the uninitiated, what is it? What's the difference?
Blue shirt versus, oh man, so your blue shirt's your non-recruited athlete.
Okay.
He's your non-recruited athlete. Your gray shirt is a recruited athlete. And when they arrive on campus, when they receive aid, and when they count towards your initial counters, which is what our pal is going to talk about right now,
very good.
Is a way you can massage your roster.
All right. Tom's not going to endure any massaging here during this broadcast. Tom Van Haren, you mentioned the counter, the initial counter. Tom, transfers are part of that as well.
Yeah, I've got a white shirt on. I don't know what that means. An initial counter, I think this is where it gets confusing for fans, and it's a point of contention for coaches, that they're allowed 25 initial counters within their recruiting class. Now, the problem for them with the transfer portal is a transfer counts against that initial counter. So what Tom was mentioning with the numbers, and if a class has 14 commitments, they might have transfers that also factor into that. Now, when you're a new coach and you're trying to build your team, I think this is where a lot of coaches have some questions of why the transfers factor in to the initial counters, because it's hard for them to build up that roster. As long as they're under that 85-person limit, they believe that they should be able to get transfers and the 25 initial counters separately. Now, the other thing that they've got to deal with the transfer portal is not just coming in, but going out. The players that are leaving, and we're seeing them leave later and later in the process. Jashaun Corbin, a running back at Texas A&M, he just recently entered the transfer portal. Now, Texas A&M has Isaiah Spiller, but losing Jashaun Corbin, now they have a need at running back, and we're going to see E.J. Smith announce his commitment. He's got Texas A&M on his list, so that's going to be a big target for them. They're trying to sell him on staying in state, but Stanford in the mix as well. And E.J. Smith has been very focused on his academics, and he was accepted into Stanford, which among the recruiting community, that is a very, very big accomplishment. I know he holds that well. And then you guys mentioned his dad, Emmitt Smith. He, of course, played at Florida. Florida in the mix as well, along with Georgia and Ohio State. So it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I spoke with a few sources just today about this recruitment, and there are a lot of coaches in the dark right now about where he's going to end up. So I think we're all going to find out when he announces where he'll go to school.
Yeah, sometimes we have a heads up on some of these announcements, or we think we might have a lean there. There are at least 2 or 3 coming up today, and E.J. Smith is one of those, where even the coaches at the respective
That makes it
schools,
fun.
Yes, that's the way it should be. No spoilers here with us. E.J. Smith going to announce here in just a few
They're all lined up alphabetically by height, by the way.
Philip Webb, C.J. Stroud. Thank you. Arian Smith, Justin Flo. I'm trying to compute what you just said. Of course, like most things, it doesn't make any sense.
An old coaching quote from somebody that you're not even old enough to know who it is.
Live signing day announcements. E.J. Smith, Philip Webb, C.J. Stroud. You can see when these announcements are taking place. We are on ESPN2 until noon Eastern. So E.J. Smith will be the last announcement on ESPN2, and then ESPNU beginning at noon Eastern. Craig Howard joining us once again. We're going to have E.J. Smith's announcement coming up, among others. What announcement are you eagerly anticipating here, Howard?
Well, we've just heard Tom Van Haren kind of break down the choices for E.J. Smith. I think he's a really interesting prospect because you have that intrigue. I think if we go into this afternoon, there are a few players. He's one of them. Talking about, you already kind of got the breakdown on the schools, which includes his dad's alma mater, but what type of player? Why are schools so interested in this young man? He's listed as a number 13th ranked wide receiver, but he's kind of that hybrid running back slot. He's got tremendous ball skills. He's really dangerous in space. He can make defenders miss. He's kind of got some slipperiness to his running style. So he's a really versatile offensive weapon that could be used in a lot of different ways, and I think you get that versatility. That's why so many schools look at him as such a valuable prospect.
All right, I hate to waste your time talking about the skill positions because I know you love talking about the trench work, and we saw a top uncommitted prospect on the offensive tackle at the offensive line spot, Marcus Dumerville, make his announcement earlier. What's the impact he's going to have there at LSU?
Yeah, this is a big pickup in the trenches for the Tigers. It was expected, but nonetheless still big. He's from St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the premier high school programs in the country. They won the state title this year, went undefeated. So you're getting a player in Marcus who understands what it takes to win, to go out and practice and compete every day. So he brings those type of intangibles with him. Big body, nice length, good feet. You see the balance, and I think he's one of these players, most importantly, that as I've watched him through the years, he's continued to get better. You want to see that type of progress. He also joins his teammate, Marlon Martinez, who was already committed to LSU, and I believe sent in his paperwork as well. So 2 outstanding offensive line pickups from Aquinas for the Tigers.
So LSU moving on up, we see, Howard, tradition-rich programs. Sometimes they falter, sometimes they backslide, some continue to dominate. What's the difference between those that do and don't when it comes to recruiting?
Well, I think, Matt, what you've got to remember on days like this is if you are a fan, don't take anything for granted. Who would ever think we would be in a position where USC is nowhere near the top 25, where Florida State is struggling as they have, where Michigan hasn't been able to get over the hump into the college football playoff rank. Texas has struggled a bit. These are programs that are historic in nature and you would think would never, ever struggle, but they are. That's what makes what programs like Alabama and Clemson are doing so impressive, is the consistency, because today is important. They say recruiting is a lifeblood of every program, But it doesn't end here today. You better ID the right players. You better get the guys that fit your culture of your locker room. And when they get there, they're going to blend in, and they're going to want to, most importantly, maximize their talent. If you sign a high school player who thinks he's got it all figured out, that guy is done. He may be highly ranked, but it becomes a bit of an albatross around a coach's neck because people are like, well, why is he not playing? Why is he not performing? He was a former 5-star. So signing good players is key. But then getting those players to play like great players once you get them on campus is ultimately what is most important. And when you look at two of the premier programs in college football right now, in Alabama and Clemson, very few busts come out of those signing classes. They seem to maximize most of those classes, and those guys you expect to be great once they step on campus are great, and that is the difference between signing great classes but being a great team as well.
Craig Hobart, part of our team, but also going to be a part of SEC Network's coverage beginning at noon Eastern. Apologies, Hobart, we will not be watching. We'll be working here, but best of luck to you, and thanks for being with us, buddy. Appreciate it.
I'll let that one go. Thanks, Ed.
That's Craig Hobart.
Beat it, Craig.
Get out of here. You're going to compete with us. He mentioned that it's not just about best players, it's right players, but also not just evaluating, but developing. Jim, I mean, what's the key to that?
Well, first of all, you have position parameters. You have things that are important from a physical standpoint to each position on
critical factors.
Yeah, and we used to call them position parameters. And it's a height, weight, speed, types of athleticism, different types of movement, things like that. You're always trying to look at potential, but player development is the key. And, Tom Herman mentioned it earlier, the strength coach is so important in recruiting because the strength coach is a guy who spends probably more time than anybody with those athletes. And you have to have a guy that is dynamic, that the players want to be around, that they believe in, that they trust, that they want to work with, that understands football, that understands the particulars of each position so that he's just not lumping them all together when they start to develop physically. Player development now also includes nutrition. It includes psychological services. Yeah. It's just so much more complex than it used to be. Hey, get in there and pump some iron, run some sprints and get fast. It's very all-encompassing now. Mental welfare, physical.
Make sure from the neck up, everything's good.
I mean, it's unusual now for teams not to have somebody on staff that with a background or that is a psychologist. Now, there's sometimes you don't want to call them a psychologist because
sports psychologist.
Yeah, sports psychologist, but player development is the key because you see so many of these kids that are 3 stars end up being great players. That untapped potential. And when it's unlocked, boy, they just bloom.
Well, and there's some common denominators there, too, of those types of players that still apply to the 4- and 5-star player that actually is that once he's completed his collegiate career. And it's all of the intangible traits. I think so much of it, too, has to do with how do you juggle all the balls in the air? Are you mature enough to be accountable for your actions, be where you're supposed to be on time? Do you embrace coaching? Do you embrace the weight room? Or are you fighting it? Are you trying to just kind of be an athlete and do your own thing? And when you see guys fail, they're not failing because they're not good enough athletes.
No.
They're failing because of some other variable. You either know it when you recruited them and you think you can work with it, or it's something that manifests itself that you didn't know about.
You have to evaluate not only football character, do they love the game?
Do they love the game?
Are they willing to do the work, but their personal character? Are they good people? Do they have, strong morals and ethics? And so you're going to miss sometimes, but if you do your homework, you can get it right.
Some programs do it a lot better than others. I don't know if I'd classify Michigan as struggling, sitting there with the top 10.
Or Texas.
Or Texas. I mean, these are first world problems if that is struggling. But we see Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, and Auburn sitting there in the top 5. Okay, there's a chime. All right, that means we're going over to Tom Van Haren in his one-bedroom studio apartment. Tom, what's the update here, the recruiting announcement?
Yeah, welcome to my crib. Rakeem Jarrett, the number 2 wide receiver, just said he's staying home. He's staying at the crib in Maryland. He flipped from LSU to Maryland. He's the number 2 ranked wide receiver in the country. He had been committed to LSU for a while. He's ranked number 21 overall. This is a huge get for Mike Locksley and his staff at Maryland. Rakeem Jarrett's from St. John's College in Washington, D.C. They want to build a wall around that DMV area. This is a great start for them. Jarrett was considering LSU Maryland and Alabama. So those are some big hitters that Maryland came out on top with. Now they're adding a big playmaker on offense to help Mike Locksley and that future team.
It's been a good last couple of weeks there for Mike Locksley, and a nice exclamation point with the addition of Raheem Jarrett. Thank you, Tom Van Haren. Appreciate it. So a big recruit there out of D.C. How about this recruit out of Dallas? E.J. Smith is going to be announcing. You might recognize the guy on the left of your screen, Emmett. You see the hats there in the forefront, and right after the break, E.J. Smith is going to announce where he is playing college football. This is National Signing Day.
He's a bit of a jack of all trades, though. I liken him a little bit to Amari Rodgers at Clemson, where you can line him up in the slot, line him up in the backfield. Great jet sweep guy, your ultimate space player, and he's just one of those kids that you can kind of plug and play in a variety of roles. The more you can do, the more valuable you are.
National Signing Day coverage rolls on again. E.J. Smith got banged up and was able to come back from injury, state playoff time, showing a lot of toughness, and one of these programs is going to get his services. Florida, Georgia, Stanford, Texas A&M, and Ohio State. Let's go out to Jesuit College Prep there in Dallas. E.J. Smith joins us now. E.J., appreciate you sharing this moment with us. It is time to share your decision. Where are you headed to school?
First and foremost, I want to thank my family and God for putting me in this position. I want to thank Jesuit, my coaches, my teachers, and everybody for helping me through my journey. I also want to thank Shelton for all the things that they have done for me in order to be in this position. And the next 4 years, I'm going to Stanford University. I forgot which one. This one? The second one, right? The second one?
E.J. Smith signing the national letter of intent with the Stanford Cardinal. You saw the hats there. He picks up the Cardinal hat and posing with family. E.J., can you hear me all right?
Well done.
We're going to be right back with E.J. as IFB might have gotten disconnected there amongst some of the hoopla, but we will chat with him in just a moment. But my goodness, this is one of those that nobody saw coming, and no matter what hat he picked up, he played it pretty close to the vest, but as he picked up that hat, Jim.
Your reaction, Coach.
Your reaction, you said, can't beat Stanford.
It's tough to, it's for someone that understands the big picture of life like Emmett and his wife do, and have raised a son like that young man who it's more than just football. You can't beat Stanford. It's Stanford, okay? It's Stanford. I used to tell people at UCLA when we'd lose a kid to Stanford, they didn't understand it. We're UCLA. I said, I know, I'm not. I didn't grow up as a UCLA guy. I grew up in Seattle, okay? When a parent hears Stanford and their kid has a chance to go to Stanford, it's different.
Yeah.
Let's get back to E.J. Smith. We've got him back hooked up. Congratulations, E.J., on the announcement. It's an announcement that you played very close to the vest. What was the biggest factor in Stanford winning your services?
I don't have my IFB.
You know, Stanford has a great football program and also has a great academic program. And, you know, that was kind of the big factor in it. You know, I loved all these schools that have given me the opportunity to come and play at their school. But I saw that Stanford was the best opportunity for me.
We obviously see your dad sitting to your right. We got a great picture that you tweeted out of you watching film with your dad. And it's certainly an advantage that not a lot of other high school athletes have. What has your father taught you that has helped you become the player you've become and helped you through this process?
You know, he's really, just told me to take my time with it. You know, just going through film every day, just working hard every day. You know, whatever you put into it, you know, you get a return back. And so, you know, with that, I'm just blessed to be in this situation, and I'm happy for what my future holds.
Well, the future is going to be involving the Stanford Cardinal. And Emmett, want to ask you a question. You went through this process years ago, although albeit without this type of national scrutiny that comes with this process. What's it been like for you to watch your own son go through this?
You know, just the journey itself, which he and I and anybody that plays the game of football understands that the process is a long process. You start at it as a young person with a vision of wanting and aspiring to be something and go places, and this is part of that process. And so for my wife and I to sit here and watch this young man grow up from a kid playing with the truth with Prime Time and his team, going to Shelton and dealing with the learning differences and getting himself positioned to not only be smart off the field, but also be exemplary on the football field and to be able to be coachable. That is huge. And so I know he's humble, I know he's hungry, and I know he has so much upside. And I think Stanford and Coach Shaw, they're getting a very good person. They're getting a person that's committed to the university and committed to working hard and getting better. I think they're going to get an even better teammate. And so I'm excited for him. I'm happy for him. He's starting his own legacy because he's chosen a school, as we all may know, is in the top 5 in the country. And so football-wise, he's going to help that team get better. And that's what his job is. That's what they're bringing him in for, and he's accepting that challenge. And I'm proud of him. I know my wife is very proud of him. And look at you. Looking good.
There's great emotion there. And Emmett, last thing, he obviously did not pick up the hat of your alma mater. I wonder what just the advice that you gave him was throughout this process, knowing the schools that he was choosing between.
You know, I'm going to take this hat. I'm going to wear this hat. But I can wear this hat. He doesn't have to wear this hat. You know, his daddy went here. That doesn't mean that my son has to go there. At the end of the day, my son has his own journey, and it is his journey, not my journey. And for him to do the things that is best for him is what we teach all of our children, to find what is best for you and go make it happen for yourself. And I'm proud of him for standing up and being the man that he is, the man that he will continue to become. And I'm a Gator. He's still a Gator because he's in my family. And my wife is a Gator because she's in our family. So we're still a family of Gators, but we're supporting not only EJ, we support Skylar, we support Jasmine, we support Reagan and Elijah. All of our children, no matter where they go. We're going to be parents first, then we can fall in with our kids, fall in second.
Emmett, really appreciate that. And EJ, congratulations on that. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
It's EJ Smith, Emmett Smith. He'll take that Gator hat. He'll take that Gator hat, put that on. You see the future Stanford Cardinal. What a moment here on National Signing Day. Approaching the noon Eastern time hour. Again, Clemson still holding firm there at number 1. We saw Stanford get a big-time commit, the son of Emmett Smith, EJ Smith, committing to Stanford. Sorry, those are my big fingers trying to navigate this thing. Stanford trying to work their way up. You see them at 22. They are going to certainly move up. You got 2 of the top 4 all-time leading rushers, their sons going to Stanford. Remember Barry Sanders went to Oklahoma State, his son went to Stanford, and then you have Emmett Smith went to Florida, and his son goes to Stanford. That's a pretty remarkable moment.
I thought so. I thought for any young father to listen to Emmett's words as he talked about perspective of life, to me, it touched me. I have 3 boys and a daughter. It touched me, and mine are grown.
Yeah. Mine aren't there yet, and for 14 years, 15 years now, we've sat on this desk, and we've seen a variety of different types and styles of player announcements. That might go down as the best endorsement for what you want your kids to aspire to be, how they handle themselves, and who you want around these young people when they're making a decision like this. I mean, dreams are coming true today. And there's a right way, there's a wrong way, we can debate all. That was perfect for what you want. on an announcement on signing day.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. I'm not living through you. You live your own life, and I'm going to support you, and he's going to Stanford. That was very cool. It's Stanford. It's Stanford. And it's ESPNU. That's where we're headed now for announcements coming your way, including some of the top uncommitted prospects as well. Matt Schick, along with Jim Mora and Tom Luginbill. We just got done over on ESPN2 with the announcement of E.J. Smith. I think we're all still kind of recovering from how cool of a moment that was. The son of Emmitt Smith decided, you know what, I'm not going to go to Florida. I'm not going to Texas A&M. I'm heading out west, one of the greatest academic institutions in the country, in Stanford. That was quite a moment that we witnessed. One of the big storylines today.
Well, one of the big storylines, certainly important for Stanford too. A bit of a down year on the field, so you want to recoup and get back to where you feel like you need to be in the hierarchy of the Pac-12. Listen, we haven't seen a ton of surprises. We've seen some flips between some programs, but as far as the teams that need to make up ground or are going to continue to make up ground, I think LSU's been off to a strong start. Auburn's been off to a strong start. Arizona State got the big one with Johnny Wilson flipping from Oregon there to Tempe. So still a lot that we don't know yet. But for the most part, near the top, it's the usual suspects.
Yeah, and that's typical. It's good from a coach's perspective to not see, a lot of drama, a lot of flips. Because I can tell you this, these guys, I don't know if they slept last night, but I know this, that you're sitting and you talk about a fax. I don't know how many people are using the fax anymore. That's kind of been phased out, but you are sitting on pins and needles, waiting until there's a verification. Your compliance officer comes in and says, yes, everything's right. Yep, he's ours, and then, but then you go on to the next one.
Right, I know. So you just want to avoid surprises.
It's a tense moment. Yeah, you do.
Avoid surprises.
And you're always kind of dancing on the edge. There's going to be a guy that you're just not sure about. If you lose him, it's devastating. If you get him, it's, we got it. We did it.
Raheem Jarrett, you talk about flips. He was an LSU commit, one of the top wide receivers in the ESPN 300, flips to Maryland. So it is, it's an interesting day, and there was some drama earlier this morning. We'll tell you about that as well. But we want to look at the class rankings here and where we are. This is the 11 o'clock hour. How about the 12 o'clock hour? All right, no real changes here. But let's scroll down here and see what Stanford was able to do. Again, getting the commitment of E.J. Smith. And that is, those are my fingers there again. It's a tough thing to do. Number 21 right now for the Stanford Cardinal, as they pick up Emmitt Smith's son, the former Florida Gator legend. Says, you know what, live your own life, head out west. That's certainly what he did. Tom Van Haren with more here on Storylines today. Hey, Tom.
Hey, you just showed those rankings. We talked about at the top of the show that race for the number one class. We said it was as tight as it ever has been in this early signing period, and we're still seeing that. Clemson is at the top. They started out early. They flipped Malcolm Green from LSU, so they bumped LSU down a few notches. Alabama was trying to flip Raheem Jarrett, but Maryland got him. So LSU lost a commitment, and Alabama missed out on a commitment as well. So Clemson has kind of stayed in that number one spot while Alabama and LSU losing and adding a little bit. But we are going to see a few other commitments. LSU already landed Marcus Dumervil. They have a chance. They're also in on Philip Webb, who's going to be announcing he's in on Florida as well as a few other programs. And then some of these commitments that we still have, there's still some surprises. We saw E.J. Smith. I mentioned he didn't tell anybody where he was going. I had a little bit of an inclination that it was going to be Stanford, but he didn't say anything. And Jordan Burch, Justin Flo, those two, I think still could have a big impact on this race for number one. We talked about some of the schools in on them. Oregon for Justin Flo. USC is in there. Jordan Burch, Clemson's in it. South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, LSU. I really think, guys, Jordan Burch, that might be one of the bigger swings for that number one class going forward.
Yeah, a lot like E.J. Smith and that. Nobody really knows, not really saying anything, and coaches will probably find out where he's headed when he makes that announcement. We'll find out as well. That's coming up on ESPNU right here. Matt Schick and Jim Mora and Tom Luginbill. More announcements still to come. Again, C.J. Stroud, top 10 quarterback. Ohio State's been in on him. We'll see if they get his services. Arian Smith, Justin Flo, is he staying out west? And Jordan Burch, top uncommitted prospect, number 3 defensive end. That kind of tells you just where the strength of this entire class is. He's the number 3 defensive end and a top 5 prospect.
Big Ten championship.
Headed to the college football playoff. How were they built? Well, Ryan Day's first big recruit didn't come from high school, but rather the Georgia Bulldogs. The Buckeyes tapped the transfer portal, came back with Justin Fields, the #1 rated recruit in the 2018 class. That 2017 class for Ohio State turned out to be a big one for the Buckeyes. Then head coach Urban Meyer brought in a class that included J.K. Dobbins, Jeffrey Okudah, and Chase Young. Speaking of Young, one of many non-Ohio natives playing for the Buckeyes. From 2015 to 19, Ohio State pulled in 41 out-of-state ESPN 300 prospects, trailing only Alabama in that span. Matt Schick, Tom Luginbill, and Jim Moore. Ryan Day, interesting challenge. Again, first world problems coming in as you're the head coach of Ohio State, but you want to put your own stamp on things, even in recruiting, but you also don't want to mess up and change things that have worked for many years.
Right. Well, they've got a great brand. They've done a tremendous job. Urban set the table, but Ryan Day has kept it going. And I think as we go through the years, we'll see his flavor put on this team a little bit more. One of the things that always stands out to me about Ryan Day is his energy on the sidelines, his energy in interviews, his sincerity. I think really comes out, and so that resonates with these recruits and these players. You know, he's the type of man that I would want to send my son to play for because I would trust him and his values, and I would trust the Ohio State brand and the education and the campus and all those, and the cool unis.
And the cool unis, yeah. And perhaps the greatest recruitment of any player that Ryan Day has done to this point is that of Justin Fields.
Sure.
Because Justin Fields has helped catapult this offense to new heights for a first-year head coach who took the reins of a program that had tremendous expectations. The standard is so high that you're going to be judged upon what you do right now. So now all of a sudden you have this type of season on the field with that type of marquee player, which is going to lead you down the positive direction in recruiting. And they have not skipped a beat. I think the results on the field, his personality, coach, to your point, speak for themselves and are a recipe for long-term success, long-term recruiting success. And you're right, they got a great brand. It's Ohio State. There's a lot to recruit to there. But when you take, usually when you get a new job, it's because the previous guy got fired, right? Very few opportunities come to get your first head coaching job at The Ohio State with an expectation and a standard like that.
They play a great brand of football on both sides of the ball. They have a history of success in putting guys into the league. They have a history of success in graduating their players. All of these kids that are signed, 99% of the kids that are signed today have dreams of playing in the National Football League. Maybe 100%
yeah,
do.
Sure.
And so part of the decision-making process is where can I go where I have the best chance to develop as a player and have a chance to go to the NFL. And Ohio State has shown that to be the case.
The thing that's interesting, too, is we showed some of those numbers about the players that they have brought into the program, players from outside of the state of Ohio. But what's most important is those players have panned out. The as-advertised guys have been their best players. So when you think about the Bosa brothers, you think about Eli Apple, that's New Jersey. Von Bell was Georgia. Raekwon McMillan, Georgia. Michael Thomas was California. All of their top-level players that are outside of their footprint have panned out.
Right, and so if you are an out-of-state kid, or if you're from the West Coast, you say, well, the last guy that went there, he had success.
Yeah.
I can have success. There's a comfortability, I think, in going to a school like Ohio State. I think they make you feel welcome. I think it's inviting. I think no matter where you are from in the country, you can go there and feel comfortable.
And Ryan Day's a big part of that.
Yeah. Ryan Day's a big part of it. The community is a big part of it. The student body, everybody.
Think about what Ryan Day can sell right now. Think about, hey, I was there on staff, and Dwayne Haskins was a Heisman finalist in his first year and only year as a starter, then was a first-round pick in the NFL. Justin Fields, I had him for 11 months. He was a Heisman finalist, finished third in the balloting. Running backs, defensive linemen, corners, wide receivers. He can sell everything.
The scary part about it is they have the least amount of depth at quarterback of any of the top-level programs right now in college football. He's got to sign a quarterback today. I mean, we're going to have Jack Miller. You got to get another one. They don't have any bodies.
You know what's hard about having a guy like Justin Fields, and he'll probably only play one more year, is that it makes it hard to recruit the next guy. I had Josh Rosen.
Yeah.
How
do you get the next guy?
he was like, I don't want to go compete against Josh Rosen, you know, and so that's a real challenge.
A guy that's talented enough that he knows he'll start eventually, but has a little humility enough that he can wait a year. And it's hard to find that line between the two guys.
But it can be a real positive, that time sitting behind a great one.
Thinking about Ohio State and how they were built, we mentioned in the how they were built about the 2017 class. Why does a day like today matter? Look at this class, all right? Shaun Wade, Jeffrey Okudah, Baron Browning, Chase Young was, the number 3 defensive end in that class. Wyatt Davis has been a stalwart on the offensive line. J.K. Dobbins, one of the top running backs in that class. All these guys playing instrumental roles in getting this team to the college football playoff. J.K. Dobbins, you could have had 2 Heisman finalists out of this class alone.
Yeah. And most of those guys are out of state, too.
Yeah. Pretty remarkable to see what they're doing. Think about now, flash forward to this class, Julian Fleming. You mentioned him earlier. He's the number 1 player overall in the 300, number 1 wide receiver. They're going to need more quarterbacks, obviously. They're hoping to get C.J. Stroud later on today for a live announcement. Julian Fleming, certainly a big reason why a quarterback would want to come here.
Well, he is. And, you know, we have very rarely had a wide receiver that's been ranked this high. Never had a receiver at number 1. You know, we've had our Julio Joneses and our A.J. Greens. Every time this guy's been a competitive environment, he rises to the occasion. I love seeing these kids that will show up anywhere, and it doesn't matter who they are, what they think their standing is. They just want to play ball. They just want to play. I want to go out there and I want to catch. I want to run routes. I want to compete one-on-one. To me, that's huge. Now, this guy here is really intriguing to me. He's built like a basketball player. He is a really long, lanky, explosive kid that hasn't even come close, Coach, to scratching the ceiling because he hasn't grown into this big frame. He's 280 pounds. He's 6'6". He's going to be a 315-pound kid here sooner rather than later and be an entirely different player in 2 to 3 years than he is now. That's what's exciting about some of these upper echelon kids that still have a high ceiling for development.
Yeah, length and growth potential at that, and foot work.
Quickness, yep.
That's what you're looking for.
And the claim for DBU, certainly Ohio State can claim that as well. They've got a handful of DB commits, Clark Phillips III, Ryan Watts, safety Lathan Ransom as well, just adding to the riches. 16 ESPN 300 prospects. You look at the Big Ten rankings, Nebraska has made a move. You see Penn State. Michigan sitting there in the top 10, trying to hold on to a top 10 class, looking for their 4th top 10 class in 5 years. Braden McGregor, defensive end, safety Makari Page. You got a corner, and Andre Selden as well. How would you evaluate, Tom, how Jim Harbaugh is navigating here as they try to continue to catch the Buckeyes?
Well, one of the things I found interesting in seeing them on the field this year and hearing all the talk about speed and space and all the things that they wanted to be offensively, and then you looked at their body types, all right? Their wideouts, Tariq Black, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nico Collins, all really good players, but they're all big guys, right? It's hard to get a lot of yards after catch after that type of player. So when you look at guys like A.J. Henning and you see some of the athletes, R.J. Moten, they're in that 5'11" to 6 foot range. The 5'10", it's almost as if they're kind of changing their philosophy on how to accentuate that speed and space. Take the 5-yard catch and turn it into an 80-yard gain. Because right now they've got run and catch guys. Go big, 50-50 ball type thing. So you see a little shift there. I think this is a really strong class, personally. I like them in the offensive line, but I like the approach to what they want to be on offense with maybe a different body type.
And I think it takes some time to transition to that,
Sure.
and they're doing that. You need explosive athletes at those skill positions. When the guy that has the ball in his hands, he looks like he's trapped. Like, think about this, the play CeeDee Lamb made this year. He looks like he's trapped, and all of a sudden he gets away. You've got to get those guys. And then with Michigan, to me, I think getting bigger on the defensive front is key as well. If you're going to compete against, beat the Ohio State University.
Braden McGregor, certainly a part of that. Let's go from Michigan, stay in the Big Ten East, and Penn State, trying to lock up their 3rd consecutive top 15 class. We're always looking at Michigan as the biggest competitor to Ohio State, but really year in and year out on the field, it's been Penn State, and consistency-wise in recruiting, James Franklin's got this program rolling.
Well, James Franklin is one of those guys, again, that you want to play for, or you want your kid to play for. Just his ethics, his morals, his personality, his energy, the way that he emphasizes not just being great on the field, but off the field. You know, all those things matter to the parent, and they should matter to the player. But you're right, and consistency over years is going to help that program build into, hopefully a powerhouse at some point. They are a powerhouse, but, let's talk about a college football playoff team.
We saw Theo Johnson there, one of the top tight ends, maybe the replacement for Freiermuth, who's...
Well, you had Freiermuth and you had Gesicki before him. It's a big component to the offense. But where I think the investment has really been made that's improved Penn State since James Franklin took over is that they have really invested in the defensive front. You're seeing an awful lot of players stack up at those 4 positions in your down guys, and not so much just a great player here, a great player here, establishing rotational depth.
Right.
So when your one crew comes off the field and your next crew goes on, there's no drop-off in production.
That's so key. Defensive line is probably the physically the most challenging position to play on the football field. And so if you can rotate 6, 7, 8 guys in, as you said, have no drop-off, then you can be a really consistent defensive football team.
There was some other, we did have some drama earlier this morning in Miami where Jaden Francois was an ESPN 300 defensive back, and he went to the table and they were going to do the announcement, and then he received a phone call, had a Miami hat on the table, received a phone call, left. He's gone for about 30, 45 minutes or so, finally got back to the table, did the announcement, unveiled a Nebraska Huskers shirt there as well. So it was down to Miami and Nebraska. So the Big Ten gets Jaden Francois, ESPN 300 prospect. Also want to mention Iowa coaching great Hayden Fry, speaking of the Big Ten, passes away after a lengthy battle with cancer at the age of 90. You think about coaching trees and legendary coaches. The Stoops family, certainly with Hayden Fry, Bob and Mark, Bill Snyder, Kirk Ferentz, Brett Bielema, Barry Alvarez, the list goes on, the impact that he had in the Big Ten.
Yeah, when I was a sophomore at University of Washington, we played his team in the Rose Bowl. And even at that point in my life when I was young, Hayden Fry was a legendary name to me. Of course, I came from a coaching family.
Yeah, same thing,
But you're talking about a guy that exemplified class, integrity, but also toughness and grit. So, our prayers to his family.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, that when you think about Hayden Fry, which we don't see much of now in today's coaching world, is sustainable longevity. Yeah. To be able to be consistent. It's one thing to build a program. It's a whole other thing to sustain it over a long period of time, and we're not seeing much more of that anymore, and he did that. What a mentor to so many coaches.
Oh, my gosh. 3 Big Ten titles, 14 bowl appearances, a few Rose Bowls, 10 top 25 finishes as well. And Kirk Ferentz looking at a top 25 class this year. Tom Van Haren got some Big Ten ties as well. Wrote a book about Michigan. That's our segue. Tom, what's the latest here on National Signing Day?
I wrote 2 books.
Oh,
wow. Okay, sorry.
Just stay in your closet over there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to the Big Ten conversation. I agree with what Tom said about Ryan Day recruiting Justin Fields. That was by far his biggest get, and I think what that has done, it's built some momentum to where they could put together this season, and now you're seeing the impact that season, but also the relationships that they've built have had on this team. We saw defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley get hired by Boston College, and there really hasn't been many of these Ohio State commitments that have flinched. We might see one decommit from Clark Phillips. We're not sure yet, but that's about it. Legend Cavazos, one of their top defensive backs, he signed. That speaks to the relationships that staff has built beyond just one coach, that the whole program, everybody has bought in there. And I think looking at the health of a program, not only does Ohio State have the #1 ranked prospect in the 2020 class, they also have the #1 ranked prospect in the 2021 class with Jack Sawyer. So even looking further ahead, I think that speaks volumes to what Ryan Day has done and how he's recruited. And then looking at Michigan, I agree with what you guys said. I think it's a great class for them. The only blemish, I think, and it wasn't their fault, was quarterback commit J.D. Johnson had to medically retire. And now they're trying to get C.J. Stroud. He's in on Ohio State, as well as Michigan and Georgia. But I think they need to get another quarterback in this class just for depth.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, they did honor the scholarship with the medical retirement. So class move there, but from Jim Harbaugh and Michigan, even though he's not going to be able to play for the Michigan football team. Thank you, Tom Van Haren. We'll continue to check in with you. Speaking of the Big Ten, here's the footprint again. Some schools have more geographic advantages than others. You feel like there's more in the state of Ohio in terms of ESPN 300 prospects than we're illustrating here. It seems to be pretty spread evenly. Perception-wise, I don't think that's the case. Is it?
No, I think if this was the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, honestly, you would see that number be far greater. But I also think that the change in the work climate, with whether it's mills and factories and things of that nature, and those shutting down, a lot of that population moved south. So you don't have the same football population that you used to have. I think those numbers are very surprising. I mean, you look at Michigan, you look at Wisconsin, you look at Minnesota, it's unbelievable.
At number 12, entered the signing period with 8 4-stars from the state of Texas alone, trying to hang on and finish in the top 10. Could be the first time since 2016 they finished outside the top 10. But right now they're in the top 4 in the college football playoff. That's important. How were they built? The third straight year, they started a transfer at quarterback, originally from Texas, and it worked out well once again. Hurts following in the footsteps of Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield on his way to becoming the Heisman runner-up. Hurts isn't the only Texan to make a name for himself in Oklahoma. The Sooners got the majority of their talent from the Lone Star State, including Hurts' top target, CeeDee Lamb. And unlike the other participants in the college football playoff, Oklahoma has relied a lot on under-the-radar prospects. The Sooners have signed just 5 top 50 recruits in the past 4 years. The 3 other college football playoff participants have at least 11. You assess here what Lincoln Riley is doing, not only on the field but in recruiting, and you see what?
I see that he gets good transfer quarterbacks. So who's the next one going to be?
Yeah, right.
And I also see that their staff develops players. And, we saw, I believe, an enormous jump in their defensive production this year, although I thought they had a midseason slump in the championship game, though they were on fire, and they're going to need to carry that into the playoff. But I think that he's so magnetic, his personality, the way they play offense. I think any, quarterback that fit his style that was thinking about transferring, that's obviously choice number 1.
Well, and he's got to be careful now a little bit with that, as it can affect high school recruiting of the quarterback.
Without a doubt.
And so you've got, Tanner Mordecai, you've got Spencer Rattler, 2 kids that they're really high on at the quarterback position, which is important. We know the likes of CeeDee Lamb, Jadon Hazelwood, who was the #1 receiver in this class a year ago, played as a freshman this year. He's going to be an exciting guy. The skill is there. I think their best corner on defense is a true freshman out of last year's class. So what has to happen to take the next step? It's front people. It's defensive front 4, front 7, the ability to be disruptive, rush the passer, but they still have the same challenges that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 have, and we've talked about that today, is where do you get them? So for Oklahoma, the answer has been you look to the junior college ranks. Our top 2 highest-ranked junior college defensive tackles are both signing with Oklahoma. All right, so maybe you get some immediate help there, Coach, but if you're being a defensive guy, knowing how important it is to win a college football playoff game, to win a national championship, how do you fix this on defense with personnel up front at Oklahoma?
You have to get big, active, athletic guys that can affect the passer, and you have to have cover guys. You just mentioned the true freshman. But for me, when I watch Oklahoma play, it's more of a change in mindset defensively.
Well, they got effort now. That's one
Well,
thing.
They do. Yeah. They sometimes have effort, and they sometimes tackle much more than they did, and they will continue to get better because Alex is there, and he does a great job of demanding that. But you've got to add talent, and then you've got to be demanding of that talent, and they're on the right track, without a doubt.
I hope that they can go reach, because you watch them. This is a college football playoff participant. They're in the mix all the time. But the one thing that they haven't had, that the ones who have won a playoff game and have won the national title have been those guys up front on that side of the ball. The offensive side is not the issue. And so it's a growth process. You just try to figure out, okay, where do I go throw my fishing pole? Like, what pool can I steal a defensive lineman from? Do I get into Louisiana? Do I get into Southern California? Where can I steal a couple of those guys?
Yeah, you're right, and then it's not the offensive side of the ball. They got 2 top 10 offensive tackle prospects that you saw there as well. They produced those linemen in the NFL draft year in and year out, and here they are once again in the college football playoff. Now, Jalen Hurts, part of this transfer quarterback epidemic going on, and it's been a good thing. Joe Burrow certainly found an opportunity. Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Jacob Eason from Georgia, Kelly Bryant from Clemson, now certainly wrapping up his career at Missouri. Jerry Hamilton, National Recruiting Insider, joining us as we always do every year. And every time we talk to Jerry, we say, hello, Jerry. Jerry, what has been, I guess, the overriding storyline today that you've been tracking?
You know, I really like what Auburn's done. You know, getting Desmond Tisdale. Lugan will remember when I shot the email, said, dude, we got to watch this guy before he kind of blew up on the recruiting radar, and we instantly put him in the ESPN 300. And then Jeremiah Pegues on the D-line. I think Auburn defensively is putting together a tremendous class. You look at who they're losing on the front four and at linebacker and in the secondary. Man, they are replenishing with talent on that front. And I love their linebacker class. Now, when you add Tisdale with Wesley Steiner and Cameron Riley, those are fast, aggressive, rangy kids, all with different body types, but playmakers at linebacker, coming off a year where they signed Owen Popo. I just think Auburn's defensive class is really, really good. DeMoy Kennedy signing with Alabama. LSU made a run at him. Alabama keeping him home and keeping him in the fold I think, it's a big-time win for Alabama. And then, obviously, Raheem Jarrett going to Maryland today, which, you know, Alabama was trying to flip him. But that's a huge win for Mike Locksley. You have to have wins like that to sell that vision to the next group of kids. So that's a big commitment, not only for 2020, but in recruiting the 2021 class.
So, Jerry, we've seen Auburn gain some ground today. We've seen LSU gain some ground today. Before it's all said and done, and not just today, but over the course of 72 hours, give us a couple of teams that you think still have some strides to be made that could finish out strong in this first period.
You know, I think Nebraska's had a great day, right? I mean, ESPN 300, Jaden Francois, Matt Schick mentioned what happened with him. Two really good receivers, Marcus Fleming and Alante Brown. They've added some key pieces. Keyshawn Green, the FSU flip a couple days ago. Nebraska's shooting up towards the top 20 classes. I have a sneaky one for you, Arizona State. Now, it may not come to fruition today, but there's going to be some kids announced at All-Star games coming up here. That I think Arizona State, they got Johnny Wilson today, but I think they may have a sneaky good few weeks here.
All-Star games like the Under Armour All-America game. That's what we'll have
like here. That one.
Coming up on January 2nd. Speaking of which, we've got some top uncommitted prospects announcing with us. Give us some top uncommitted prospects that are not announcing today. It could be, like you said, at some of these All-Star games like Under Armour or in the late signing period.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look, our number one rated safety, Avante Williams, was a long-time Oregon commitment. He backed out of that commitment. Now he's going to announce in February he's going to visit Ole Miss January 25th. So does Lane Kiffin get a big win late in January? Miami's hanging around that. We'll see if Florida makes a move. Avante Williams, number one safety, is one to watch. We'll see him in the Under Armour All-America game. I'll throw another one that's been a big senior riser, Alfred Collins out of Cedar Creek and Bastrop High. He looked like a lock to Texas all year. He's a big, massive defensive lineman. He's visited Alabama, Baylor, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. Now Baylor's got a real shot there. We'll see if Chris Ash being hired at Texas can come through and save that one for Texas. But that's a big recruitment for Texas. That would be a huge win for Baylor and even Oklahoma or Alabama. That would be an upset of Alfred Collins. His mom played basketball at Texas. That one looked like it was headed to Texas forever. Then after all the transition with the coaching staff at Texas, he's kind of taken a step back. That's one to watch. And I think Baylor is going to have a pretty good January as well.
Alfred Collins, top 10 defensive end out of the state of Texas. Jerry Hamilton is an ESPN national recruiting analyst. Thank you, Jerry, and goodbye, Jerry.
Thank you.
Jerry Hamilton. Top uncommitted prospects. How about one that is going to announce on our air here in just a matter of moments? He's the 10th ranked pocket passing quarterback, C.J. Stroud, number 176 overall. Kind of a late bloomer here, Lou.
Well, it was interesting. Late to arrive on the scene. Really blew up this summer at the opening and participating in the Elite 11. Really accurate kid, polished, has some anticipation traits that I think are really important, which helps him with timing and rhythm. Can make all of the throws, as you can see here. Sometimes in recruiting, You know, you're not going to identify the guy when he's a sophomore. You might not catch on to him, and then all of a sudden he pops onto the screen and whoa, here we go. And that's going to happen in each and every year.
Baylor and Michigan State were in on him early. Then he was the MVP of the Elite 11, like you said. Oregon comes in, the Buckeyes surge. His last four officials: Georgia, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State. Seeing them on the screen, you see USC as well. C.J. Stroud, 10th ranked pocket passer in our ESPN 300 rankings. We head out to Rancho Cucamonga High School in California for C.J. Stroud and his announcement. C.J., thank you very much for sharing this moment with us. What's it going to be? Where are you headed to school?
First and foremost, I want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He's opened up doors for me that I never thought could be imagined, and I'm just truly blessed, and I'll continue to give him all the glory and the praise. Without further ado, for the next 34 years, I'll be furthering my education and play football at the Ohio State University. Go Bucks.
C.J. Stroud heading to Ohio State University in Columbus. And look at the banner. Wow. OHIO, and that's where he is signing on the dotted line. CJ, congratulations on the announcement. Why did you pick Ohio State?
Ohio State was definitely the best choice for me, I felt. I mean, I just thank all the college coaches for extending me a scholarship and changing my life. But, I mean, I just feel like I'm really close to Coach Day, Coach Yurcich, and, I mean, those guys are definitely doing great things, and I feel like I can be a part of it.
How much did the success of Dwayne Haskins in 1 year, Justin Fields in 1 year as a starter, what kind of impact did that have on your decision?
It definitely does, because, I mean, I feel like Ohio State is definitely putting out the best quarterbacks and getting them ready for the NFL, and that's definitely something I want to do in the future. And, I mean, I just feel like I can be the next dude for it. And, I mean, I'm just blessed from God.
What was Ryan Day's pitch to you?
He was just in awe of my leadership skills from the opening, and I was on the team with a lot of Ohio State commits, and they were my receivers, DBs, and I just led those guys, and we won the championship, and those guys raved about me to Coach Day, and he just loved that about me. He loved my footwork and everything I did on the field, but he was mostly impressed with my faith and my leadership.
CJ, the recruiting process for you was maybe a little bit different, maybe a little bit slower moving as a sophomore or a junior, and then things exploded for you. What was the turning point in recruiting that really got your name out there from a national perspective for these college coaches?
I feel like the opening definitely opened up a lot of people's eyes. I mean, I've been playing football for a long time, but I mean, I don't think it was ever on a national stage until then. I just thank those guys at the opening, at the Elite 11, for opening up those doors for me and letting me do what I do on the national stage. And I knew the football stuff would take care of itself, and I just had to prove it to everybody in the world.
Being a part of the Elite 11 is one thing. Being the MVP Elite 11 will open up some more doors. Congratulations, CJ, and best of luck at Ohio State. We'll see you down the road.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. God bless.
C.J. Stroud, you as well. That's heading from out west. Again, we see some of this California migration. It continues to happen there. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But just, Tom, the importance of this announcement for Ohio State.
I just think it's critical. It adds two quarterbacks, Jack Miller being the other one. You had to take two grad transfer quarterbacks, and Chris Chuganoff and Gunnar Hoke out of Kentucky and West Virginia, just to fulfill a scholarship roster behind Justin Fields. This is about improving depth, improving the ability level of the position, and creating competition in the room.
Yeah, competition is what you're always after. Cooperative competition, not contentious competition, and that's what Ohio State does well. But it's a good-looking young kid. You're talking about 6'3", 195. You watch the highlights, he's smooth. He can make every throw. He's got a great rhythm. That Elite 11 is a chance for a lot of these kids, kind of that bust on the scene late to make a statement.
You can see him making some announcements there and just talking to the gathered assembly of friends and students there at Rancho Cucamonga. When you think about evaluating that position and the quarterback position as a whole, you could flip a coin on a lot of these guys, not even in terms of their development, but whether or not they're going to finish at the school that they sign with, whether it's because of competition or adversity and all those things. What goes into evaluating and recruiting that position specifically?
We got 3 hours to go right now.
I mean, it's the most complicated position to evaluate because you have to evaluate so many different aspects of the person and the player. And I think that until you see a young man throw in person, and how his stroke is and how the ball comes out of his hand and how it sounds in the air and how catchable it is, it's hard to offer somebody. So you have to find an opportunity to get your coordinator, your quarterback coach out to see them throw. But is he a winner? You know, what's his personality? Can he lead people? Do people follow him, not just through words, but his actions? You know, what's his growth potential? In today's game, you know, mobility is such a factor, and being able to get out of the pocket and make throws. How can he handle adversity? I mean, I could go on and on and on. I'll tell you this, you know, Bill Walsh always talked about, hey, your quarterback better be a great decision maker, all right? He better be a leader. He better have pocket mobility. He better have arm strength and toughness. And so those are things you're looking at.
Accuracy, aptitude, mental toughness, competitiveness, and athleticism. I think those 5 things in whatever order that you want to put them in. And then, does the guy love the game? Does he work at it?
Boy, you
and
better.
That's so hard to identify
goodness.
with these guys because they get so caught up in everything, and it's easy for them at the high school level.
Well,
then it gets hard.
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand. You have to love the game of football. You have to be fully committed to it. That doesn't mean you forsake everything else, but that has to be priority number one. I hate to say that in college because it's supposed to be getting our degree, but if you want to be great, you better be committed to it. And if you're not going to succeed.
And a commitment and a big one as C.J. Stroud commits to Ohio State. Justin Fields, the only current ESPN 300 quarterback on the roster. So now they get another one there. And, of course, Miller, the other quarterback, part of that class. C.J. Stroud, one of the many commitments that we've got for you today. How about Philip Webb, ESPN 300 outside linebacker out of Georgia, Lou?
Well, you see the length, 6'4", 225, playing as a linebacker, but you also know he can put his hand down. He can play from space. Really good edge guy that can run around. He's got range. I think he's one of those guys, and I don't want to make an Isaiah Simmons comparison.
You just did.
I know, but when I say that, can play in a variety of roles. And he's scheme friendly. He's scheme versatile. And when you're long like that, you might project later on, Coach, am I right, down to do an edge guy if you get to the 245, 250-pound range.
Without a doubt. You're 6'4", and you're 245, and you can rush the passer. You see his length. You see him shed there and get off blocks and keep a wide base. And this is a very talented young man. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of places you can play this guy.
Yeah.
Put him at receiver in the red zone a little bit. You know, put him in, move him around like they do Simmons, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what coaches are looking for. So
get him on the roster and figure it out later.
That's right. He's a great player.
Last official visit was Alabama on the 6th of December. Auburn might have read the writing on the wall, didn't bring him in for a visit. Appears to be an Alabama-LSU battle. Florida certainly in the mix there as well. Philip Webb, ESPN 300, top 25 prospect, number 4 outside linebacker. We go to Lanier High School, Sugar Hill, Georgia. Philip, what's it going to be?
First and foremost, I want to thank God for just blessing me and putting me in this position. Without him, none of this would be possible. I also want to thank all my coaches, friends, and family members for supporting me. This hasn't been an easy process, but after much prayer and consideration, I'll be fathering my academic athletic career at Louisiana State University.
Philip Webb. Philip Webb to LSU, so they get Doomerville on the offensive line. Now they get an outside linebacker. Oh, by the way, they got a 5-star tight end and Eric Gilbert at LSU. Think about the momentum that LSU has. Luke, as we look at this class, LSU, you think about programs and when they have successful seasons, it's usually the following class that you really see a bump. LSU maybe ahead of schedule because of the magnitude of the season that they're in the midst of?
Well, they're certainly capitalizing on the moment. So to your point, Matt, you're right. The bulk of this class has already been in tow prior to this magical season.
Sure.
But the ability to use the end of this year to close it out down the stretch, it's a rarity in recruiting, Coach.
It's pretty awesome. Look at Coach O. He's we all know he's a great recruiter. So yeah, this season helped him.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna tell you what, Coach O walks into your living room.
Oh.
And he's so real and he's so passionate. He's probably brings dumbbells in. And he's probably doing curls. You know? Yeah. He's just. I think there's a Coach O effect here that is, you know, hand in hand with what they've done this year. And like you said, the way they've closed.
Yeah.
Philip Webb said moments ago, it was Ed Orgeron was a huge reason why he committed. You're exactly right.
He's a great guy.
What he was hired there to do.
He's awesome.
That's what he did at USC.
Genuine. He's so real.
Yeah.
He's so about the state.
Players.
He's so about the university. And his passions, it's infectious. I mean, I love watching his interviews.
I'm telling you, I just like I said on College Football Live on Tuesday, the end of that Heisman speech should be played on a reel in that LSU building.
It probably is. I'm sure.
It's on there. You think it's on there right now?
Every recruit
sent to every iPad.
Restart.
They've all sent it. Here's our recruiting pamphlet. Here's the video of Joe Burrow's Heisman speech. By the way, along with Eric Gilbert, 2 of Georgia's top 5 in the state commit to LSU. So big wins there for Ed Orgeron. A few more announcements still to come here on our National Signing Day. 4 more total, we should say. Top 6 athlete Arian Smith. You see Justin Flo, a top 10 prospect. Jordan Birch as well, who's played this very close to the vest. We're getting 2 for the price of 1. They're out in Florida at Lakeland. That's Arian Smith and Kendall Dennis, 2 high school teammates. We'll see if they decide. PN 300 wide receiver Muhsin Mohammed III, son of the former NFL wide receiver. Let's scroll down here, looking for a Pac-12 team. There we go. We got a couple of them outside the top 10. See Washington and Oregon, and then our first California team, not USC, not UCLA, it's Stanford. After getting E.J. Smith, Emmitt Smith's son, committing from Dallas, committing to Stanford. Speaking of the California recruits in the Pac-12, look at what's going on there out west. Last year, only 9 out of the 33 ESPN 300 recruits from the state of California stayed in state. That's 27%. So 24 of the 33 left California. It's continuing a trend that kids in California just don't stay home. Currently, none of the top 10 players in California are committed to in-state schools.
That's stunning.
Can you explain why that has happened?
I don't know. I can try.
I mean, you experienced this at UCLA?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Not too much. When you have these Midwest or Southern, Southeastern powerhouses coming out there, there's an allure to the big-time football player, the guy that just dies to play football, to go play at Alabama or go play at Georgia or at LSU or at Texas or at Ohio State or at Michigan. I think that with what's happened at USC, it's just affected everything. USC was always the lure for the West Coast.
If there was a great player and SC wanted him, he was theirs to get.
They got him if they were in the state of California, and that doesn't happen anymore. And I just think there's, once the dam breaks, once an exodus starts, it's easier for the next guy to go that way. You've seen Oklahoma come into California as well. So it's stunning. It's something that they've got to figure out and get turned, or the Pac-12 is going to continue to be left out of the college football playoff. It's that simple. It's all about players, not formations and plays. You have to have players.
Look at these. So Justin Flo, we'll see if he stays out west. Daniel Nagata, we'll see. Bryce Young flipped from USC to Alabama. DJ Ugalele, I tried that and I apologize. The ukulele. To Clemson from California. St. John Bosco. Kendall Milton signed with Georgia. Look at this. So Arizona State. Oh, Johnny Wilson. He was Oregon. Now staying in the Pac-12. Yep. LSU. Ohio State. We'll see if Clark Phillips III hangs on there with Ohio State. But you see all of these schools outside of the footprint.
SC's got to sign Gary Bryant. They can't allow Gary Bryant to go to ASU or so that they've got to get that kid. But you're right. The allure of what some of these bigger, stronger programs from a national perspective has done and how it's influenced the West Coast. And listen, to those coaches' credit, to Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Alabama, whoever, when they saw a window, they pounced on it. Yeah. And while SC has been down, UCLA's trying to work their way up. We've seen Oregon emerge. We've seen Washington under Chris Peterson's leadership emerge. There was a window there that got taken advantage of, and how do you close it?
Well, I don't know how you close it. You've got to convince a big-time guy to stay home, and then hopefully the tide turns. But it's a tall task. You got to get on these guys early, like I said, and build a relationship with them where they want to be a part of your program. I know at USC, get them on campus. I mean, it's a beautiful campus. I had 2 kids that went to school there. You know, my son is still there. I walked around that campus with my youngest son the other day. I was like, God, who wouldn't want to go to school here? Yeah. Right. You know, it kind of put in perspective to me why it was tough to recruit against USC when we were at UCLA. I mean, it's a stunning place.
Yeah.
So
the blue chip bell cow program of a conference. If they suffer, the rest of the league suffers. Texas and Big 12, Oklahoma has certainly replaced them there at the top. We saw Florida State dropping in the ACC. Now it's Clemson. Look at this for the National Signing Day. ESPN 300 commits by conference. SEC has what the Big Ten and ACC have combined. We know the numbers aren't essentially equating, but look at the Big 12 and Pac-12. That's roughly half combined of what the SEC had.
I think one thing to note, though, with that, and you look at the states, and we've talked a lot about the footprint, is on the West Coast, you've got the state of California, and then you've got the states that border it, okay? Arizona, Nevada, then you're going to have Oregon, you're going to have Idaho, and you go around, you're going to have Utah, Oregon, Montana. Okay. There is not a strong, deep player pool of difference-maker style players on all of the states that border California.
Sure.
But the states that border Florida, there are.
Right.
South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, all of those states, if you lose out on a guy in Florida, you can replace him with the same guy or better in 5 states that border them.
Let me tell you another factor that I believe is significant. Playing on TV in primetime games to a national television audience.
Absolutely.
Kids want to do that, and coaches use that in their recruitment. They say, hey, listen, you come to our school every week. 12 weeks, you're going to play on national TV.
In a window where everybody sees it.
In a window where everybody sees it, a primetime game. Yeah. You go to Arizona State, you go to Arizona, you know, sometimes the Pac-12 schools, night games, late games. It is a factor. Believe me, it's a factor.
You don't think a cell would be play at 9 a.m. local?
I don't know who thought of that idea.
Might be happening.
Hopefully no one that's my boss.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
No, for a coach, that would be a disaster.
Oh, man.
We'll see what happens there with the Pac-12 and out west. Let's continue the conversation. Tom Van Haren with a little more here on National Signing Day. Hey, Tom.
Yeah, Coach, you talked about how nice the campus is, how beautiful it is there. The only problem is the rest of what you guys talked about, that all these big-time schools are now coming into California and trying to recruit these kids. So what that means is if you're USC, you better be able to fend that off, and you better be equipped to do that. And what I looked at and what fans aren't privy to is the recruiting departments in many of these schools, Alabama specifically, Clemson especially, their recruiting departments have grown in size tremendously over the last 5 to 10 years. You look at these recruiting departments and there's graphic design teams, there's recruiting assistants. They're filled to the brim, and at USC, that's not the case, and they're severely lacking in that department. They have good people there. Gavin Morris, one of the best recruiters out west, they have good people. They don't have enough of them, and they're not equipped to fend off some of these big schools like Alabama and Clemson. And now, guys, we're seeing it with these class rankings in this class specifically.
That's really interesting to hear, because we hear all the time about the arms race of facilities and infrastructure. Sometimes the infrastructure and recruiting isn't the lounge that you get to sit in. It's the personnel and the employees that are helping navigate that environment.
Pac-12 doesn't have as much money as those other conferences.
No.
They don't have a good TV deal. They don't have the revenues. They don't put the people in the stadiums. They're at a serious disadvantage. They can't hire these people. I think USC is about to make a huge jump in all of those areas with the new AD and the commitment to Clay Helton. I think they will.
They're going to have to, because it is about 2 things: staffing and resources. And are you going to put those resources to expanding that staffing so that you can compete with anybody on a level in which USC should, is expected to, and they are capable of, and they should.
They need to get big guys.
Yeah,
they've got
up front on both sides of the ball. I know.
Talked about offensive, defensive linemen that are drafted in the first
dang theme
2 rounds of the draft.
Keeps lingering.
Coming up.
It keeps coming back. It'll be interesting to see. Again, one of the big recruits USC did lock up, Graham Harrell.
course, the OC staying there. Lakeland, Florida is going to be a place where we got a couple of announcements coming up. Arian Smith, ESPN 300, top 40 athlete. He will be first coming up, and his teammate Kendall Dennis, 4-star corner as well. Big 12, SEC, ACC, all in play here. It's National Signing Day. We're going to the Sunshine State next. So let's switch it. It's the 1 o'clock hour. See if we have any changes. We scroll down here. And Nebraska up a few spots. Nebraska
into the top 20.
Into the top 20. We mentioned Jaden Francois, ESPN 300 defensive back that they got out of South Dade High School amid some drama there. They didn't want to announce, then did, and unveiled a Nebraska Cornhusker t-shirt. Well, we got some more announcements to make here live on ESPNU, and Arian Smith certainly could impact the recruiting class rankings. Appears to be an SEC battle for the top 40 athlete.
Yeah, and he plays everywhere, both sides of the ball. This is one of those kids that I think he's got ball skills. He's got some physical toughness that really stands out on defense. But then he can do this type of stuff. He can take plays big distances. One of those guys, you see the stride, he's smooth, fluid athlete. One of those players that could take the 5-yard hitch and turn it into an 80-yard touchdown.
You see some of his final schools we'll show you here in a minute, but he is a track star. The number 6 athlete, he and Georgia track athlete Matthew Bowling were 2 of the 4 members of the under-20 4x100 team that broke the world record. 38.62 seconds.
That fast?
I think it's fast. He's lined up at wideout, quarterback, tailback, making plays, and he's going to make an announcement. Alabama and Georgia, the Sooners. Arian Smith joining us live here from Lakeland High School. Arian, appreciate you sharing the moment with us here on National Signing Day. The floor is yours. Where are you headed to school?
Thank you. I just want to thank God for letting me be here today. I want to thank my mom, my stepdad, any family that has helped me during this process, because it has got overwhelming and difficult. I want to thank all my siblings, my brothers, Kevin, my sister Deja, my other little brother Kenneth, other little brother Elijah, Grace and her family. Thank you. And I want to thank Coach Baylor, any coach that has helped me during this process or mentored me in any way. And I would like to say that I will be attending the University of Georgia.
Arian Smith headed to Georgia from Lakeland High School as he gets that microphone, a little unzip, and there's the Georgia T-shirt. Arian, congratulations! Thanks for sharing it with us. What was it about Georgia?
Thank you.
trying to get that.
Got a wardrobe malfunction.
Trying to get that jacket to work. That zipper can be a very tricky thing.
Bro.
You can always ask your teammate for help. He's just watching you there.
All right, got it.
There you go. All right, we got it. Now it's official. Now it's official. Now you do have a microphone on that jacket, so make sure that you. Want to make sure we don't have a true audio malfunction. All right. Now let me ask you the important question. What was it about Georgia?
Just like I said, they got how they used Miko Harmon last year. Just they need that fast guy, that guy who can take kick returns and punt returns, back to the crib, and Fly can go there and play early. I trust Coach Smart, to get me to the league so I can take care of my family one day. And
you mentioned
it's just something about the coaches. I just feel comfortable with them, and that's why I chose Georgia.
You mentioned. Can you still hear me? Okay, Aaron.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to make sure your IP was still in there. You mentioned speed. We want to show up the picture here that you tweeted out earlier in the summer. You were part of the Pan Am under 20 4x100 meter relay team that set the world record. That's Matthew Bowling there, who's a viral sensation. He's there on the left, a part of that team. You're in that picture as well. How would you describe just that experience on the national stage?
That experience, that was crazy because we wasn't even we wasn't even trying to break the world record. We were just we were trying to have fun. I remember Coach Spearman telling us just go out there, like, get good exchanges and just do what we got to do. And we ended up working. It don't even feel real still to this day that we are, like, working holders. It was just blessed to be able to do that because not every kid gets the opportunity. But it was pretty fun.
Well, that's maybe one of the reasons that you had that America USA flag there on the front as well, unzipping for the Georgia emblem there. Congratulations, and we'll get back to your high school teammate in just a moment. Congrats on the Georgia commitment. Thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you.
That's Arian Smith, number 6 athlete, very apropos for what we saw there. First, the track star, and also talking about Mecole Hardman. They've been looking for a game breaker at receiver.
They need speed. They need guys who can take the hitch, the slant, like Alabama does, and take it to the house. You know, so it's not all on the quarterback. They don't have to grind out the yards. They can make some big plays. This guy is a big play maker.
I love the comparison and the pitch there by Georgia's staff because that's exactly what Mecole Hardman was. He's a slot, an outside guy, jet sweep guy, an end-around guy, can return kicks and punts, changes the game. And when you have speed that you can't coach and you have versatility, which obviously he does, that's a big get offensively for Georgia.
Do you put him at receiver? You could have him as an athlete. What do you think?
Yeah, I think with his height, you're tempted to put him on defense.
I want the ball in his hands.
I know, you got to get the ball in his hands.
Like that. I want the ball in his hands.
You look at this Georgia class, again, looking for a 4th straight top 5 class. Entered the day with 16 commits. How about the fact that there were close to 30 ESPN 300 commits in the state of Georgia? Just a handful committed to the Dogs, the fewest in 13 cycles. Just one of those years where you just go outside the borders.
Can't keep them all, and then I think the thing that you've got to acknowledge, and I think Kirby Smart certainly does, is that the ones you do go on, they better pan out. You can't have the guys go out of your state to other places, be great players, and the ones you took didn't.
They got number 6 corner Major Burns out of Baton Rouge to commit to Georgia as well yesterday. Let's go over to Tom Van Haren with more on this announcement. Tom?
Yeah, guys, you mentioned if you keep him at receiver, you look elsewhere. Arian told me beforehand that he thinks he can complement what they already have on the roster. You've got George Pickens, who had a great freshman season for them, but Kirby Smart spoke in the SEC championship game about their need for receivers, and that's what this class is built on, needs. We saw Isaiah Wilson, Andrew Thomas, 2 of the tackles for Georgia, declare for the NFL draft. Georgia fills it with 3 ESPN 300 tackles in this class, including the number 1 ranked tackle in Broderick Wilson. So this class overall, from top to bottom, they have Georgia has 17 commitments total in the class. 14 are ranked in the ESPN 300. That's a tremendous number for Georgia. And if you look at the top of the rankings, when we go back and look again at that race for number 1, Georgia sitting at number 6. They may now move up with Arian Smith in the fold. But in that top 6, Georgia is the only class with less than 22 total commitments. That means they've got room to add more, and they've got the potential to keep moving up and try to get that number 1 class.
Well, they're getting Broderick Jones, number 1 offensive tackle. They're going to lose Andrew Thomas, who's skipping the bowl game and heading to the National Football League, hopes to get drafted very highly. So, again, replacing their needs there at Georgia, Luke's.
Yeah, and I think in fairness with Georgia, when we saw Jake Fromm take the reins of this offense, he walked in the huddle. He had 2 bona fide first-rounders at running back, all right? Everybody around him in front of him was a future NFL player at the skill spots. He had 3 tight ends, and then all of a sudden you take the field this year, and everybody's brand new. And so I think it's just a bit of a turnover in terms of personnel, finding the right mix, having more experience. I mean, when George Pickens is a true freshman, and he's kind of your best guy because he's better than what you have.
And Cager's hurt.
And Cager's hurt. I mean, that tells you the work you got to do in recruiting.
Yeah. Need DeAndre Swift again in that SEC championship game. Was less than 100%. Had 5 offensive touches in that game. So certainly Jake Fromm and that Georgia offense looking for some more offensive weapons. We've got 2 big commitments still to come. 2 top 10 prospects. Justin Flo from out west. Jordan Birch from the southeastern footprint. We'll see where they announce here before we are done today. But 3 total announcements, including Kendall Dennis, Arian Smith's high school teammate from Lakeland. We will go back to Lakeland High School in just a little bit. It's Arian Smith's teammate. He's a 4-star corner. He's down to 4 schools, 4 different leagues. You see the hats there on the table. He'll narrow it down to 1 league and 1 school. It's announcement time.
Yeah, listen, we talk about length on the perimeter, being able to match up with these big, long kids on the outside. And I just think this kid's got a lot of natural physical skill and instincts for when the ball's in the air. He's really good in terms of body control, timing. You always see him around, keeping the ball in front of him, and he can elevate. Very, very important, I think, in what today's passing game has become with the 50-50 ball.
Took an unofficial visit to Tennessee in the summer, a few officials in the fall, including Oklahoma and Nebraska. Visited Florida State and Mike Norvell last weekend. He's got 5 picks in his senior season, a pick 6, a punt return for a touchdown as well. The 4-star corner from Kendall Dennis, choosing between a handful of schools, and was offered by Clemson a couple weeks ago as well, but they didn't make the cut. You see Oklahoma, Tennessee, Florida State, and Nebraska in the mix for this 4-star corner. No Nebraska hat, however, on the table. We'll see what that means here in just a matter of moments. Kendall Dennis back at Lakeland High School. You saw Arian, your high school teammate, make his announcement. Now it's your turn. Kendall, what's it going to be?
First of all, I'd like to thank God. I'd like to thank my mama, my whole family, all my high school coaches, all the college coaches that recruited me. For the next 3 to 4 years, I will be attending University of Oklahoma.
Kendall Dennis announces and commits to Oklahoma. The first corner commit of the class as well. What was it about the Sooners, Kendall?
Just the coaches, just the family tradition out there, and I just want to go out and play early out there.
They made some improvements on defense this year. How instrumental was Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator, in your recruitment?
It was good. He talked to me every day, you know what I'm saying? He really wanted me, and yeah, the whole staff really just communicated with me good in this whole recruitment process.
Kendall Dennis announces to Oklahoma. So a couple of guys, one to Georgia and one to OU. Congratulations, Kendall. Thanks for sharing the moment with us.
Thank you.
First commit for Oklahoma from the class from the state of Florida. Had 6 in the last 2 classes. Good to get there in the state of Florida. If you're OU, what does a commitment like that mean to Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch?
Yeah, you're trying to improve your defense. You get a player like this, you improve your defense. The thing that sticks out to me when you watch him is, for a young guy, he's got really good technique. And then you said it when you were evaluating him here. He can find the ball in the air.
Yeah.
He's artful around the receiver, and he can make plays because he's got good timing. And that's what it's all about. It's one thing to be there as a corner, but you need to be there and make the play. Yeah. Either the ball goes on the ground or it's in your hands, not in their hands, and you're close. So that kid can do that.
Yeah, and like we said earlier about this defense, I thought their best defensive secondary player on this team this year was Jaden Davis, who was a true freshman from last year's class that they also signed out of Florida. And so they're starting to build on the perimeter there, and they're now getting a little bit of length, which is so important. We referenced with Oklahoma earlier, top 2 ranked defensive tackles at the junior college level, hopefully can come in, give them some immediate depth and some production up front. So it is all about defense. They're going to have access to the best of the best offensive players in all of high school football every year. So it's this side of the football that they've got to make hay.
I love kids from Florida, and I don't mean to generalize, but there's something about recruiting a young man from Florida. There's a toughness that's inherent in those guys, a love of football that's inherent in those guys.
A little bit of an edge.
They play with a mean streak. You know, they've got a toughness. So I like that for Oklahoma. I think that's what they need.
One of the prizes of this class, Reggie Grimes, they beat out SEC teams for him. His father played at Alabama, then coaches in the Tennessee area as well. That's a huge statement to make as well. How instrumental was that Reggie Grimes commitment?
And well, we got to see him put the pen to paper. That's the important thing. But no, very, very important, just because he can be such a dominant factor. He can be a player that changes the game from a disruption standpoint. One of those guys that can play in a variety of roles but can rush the passer. I think that's the thing too that is so big, particularly, Coach, and I don't know how you feel from a defensive standpoint, because quite honestly I don't know why anybody coaches defense in college football anymore because it's a no-win situation. But when you have scheme versatile guys with the pace of play and you can't always substitute, you got to keep your guys on the field.
Yeah, they have to have some endurance. They got to be able to affect the passer.
Yeah.
Got to be able to, and not just get him down every once in a while.
Yeah.
Force him at the throw.
Tackle the quarterback every once in a while.
In the old days, you gave up 350 yards and they fired you. Now you can give up 500 yards and win the game.
Get a raise.
Yeah, what the heck's going on?
Different.
We got a couple of more announcements to come, both in the top 10 in the ESPN 300. Justin Flo from California, #1 outside linebacker. Where will he go? Jordan Burch has kept his announcement under wraps as well. About an hour away from Justin Flo, and then Jordan Burch. 2 top 10 prospects here. Matt Schick, Jim Mora, and Tom Luginbill. We talked a lot the hours here on National Signing Day about the rich getting richer and all those types of things. There are some changes that could be coming with the NCAA and name, image, and likeness. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know what it's going to entail, but your mind starts to wander about the impact that could have. What impact do you think allowing kids to profit above the table on their name, image, and likeness have in recruiting?
Well, #1, I think it's a good thing. I don't know how it's going to be I think the concept of helping these kids financially is a good thing. Yes. I don't know how it's going to be structured. I don't know the best way to do it. That's way above my pay grade. But I think there's going to be an impact. I really do. Let's just take a smaller school, for example. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're UNLV. Okay, and you've got all these casinos out there, and your kid, now they can't bet, but can they be endorse a casino?
Sure.
I don't know. Can that casino use their name and likeness?
Right.
You know, you go to UNLV, you know that you can bet on games during the games.
Right.
I mean, if you're a fan of UNLV.
Right.
So there's just a lot at play here. There's so much to be worked out, though. I mean, you throw it out there, and then you got to figure it all out.
The devil's always in the details.
And it is very complicated. But I will commend the NCAA for at least taking positive steps to help compensate the college student athlete.
How you police it, how you manage it, how you structure it, I don't think anybody truly knows. No. But what I do know is that no matter what you do with name, image, and likeness, the best programs are still going to attract the best players.
Absolutely.
That's happening. Where I do think you could maybe see a bit more parity, if you will, is let's just say School A is a top-tier, top-5 program, and they're competing against another school in their conference that maybe is a threshold top 30 program, all right? And they're recruiting the same wide receiver, and at School A, that wideout might be one of 6-7 guys with the same ability level. Maybe his name, image, and likeness isn't as profitable there as if he goes to the other school where maybe he's a difference maker and he becomes the most profitable guy. And now all of a sudden he has an opportunity to earn off of name, image, and likeness more so than he would have at the other place. And that's going to be a recruiting tactic, right? Yeah. And that's going to be a part of it.
The teams that capitalize on that the soonest will make the most progress. I think it's so complicated.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how it's going to work. I hope it works. I'm for the player. So
it'll be interesting. Again, do you want to be the big fish in the small pond and all those types of things? Do you stay in school a little bit longer instead of being a late round NFL pick? Because maybe your big earning stages are right there in college.
Not to go crazy, do you think, though, there should be something tied to academic success in terms of earning a degree and some of those sorts of things?
I would like to
There'd have to
see
be some
that.
stipulations, right?
I just think that we get short-sighted sometimes. You're going to You need that degree.
Yeah, you do.
Your career ends at some point. You need a degree. You need a second pass. You need a plan. So I agree with you. Yeah, if it's tied to academic success, to getting a degree, yes, absolutely.
Well, the NCAA would like it to be tethered to education. What that looks like, who the heck knows?
So I think most parents would want it tethered to education.
We'll find out what exactly that means, hopefully sometime soon, as our National Signing Day coverage. And let's see how those Tigers were built. Tigers, after years of struggles at quarterback, LSU finally found its answer in the transfer portal thanks to former Buckeye turned Heisman Trophy winner Joe Burrow. Very few teams can come into Louisiana and steal one from the Tigers. From 2016 to 2019, LSU signed 32 ESPN 300 recruits from the state, including Clyde Edwards-Helaire. In that span, no other team had more than 6. And with Burrow at quarterback, Coach O able to keep some elite playmakers at home, Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, Justin Jefferson, all hailing from the state of Louisiana. How has Ed Orgeron taken this recruiting, though, to another level there at LSU, Tom?
Well, they've invested from a football operations standpoint. They've invested in facilities upgrades, so they're where they need to be there now in regards to that. I think what he's done maybe as well as anybody is he's taken upon himself to say, my job here is to get the best players possible, and I'm going to hire good football people to coach the X's and O's. They're going to grind on the road when we recruit, but as far as player identification, my job and all of our jobs depends on how well we evaluate players, how well we create an environment here that is attractive for our in-state kids to not even consider leaving. And in that state, if you've ever been in Louisiana, you might come off of a dirt road somewhere underneath a couple of trees and some shrubs and find a 6'1" corner or a 6'3", 280-pound defensive tackle. Nobody knows who he is. I mean, there's so many nooks and crannies in that state of great personnel, and there's no other Power 5 school to compete with them.
Seeing LSU in their class, again, trying to lock up their first top 5 class under Ed Orgeron. You saw Eric Gilbert there, Jermaine Burton. They're trying to hold on to him. Don't believe he will be signing today. We had Marcus Dumerville out of St. Thomas Aquinas. He announced live on our air picking LSU. B.J. Ojulari was obviously a big win for LSU. Flipped him from Tennessee. Devon Clowney is there as well. I think he'll be on the next page, cousin of Jadeveon Clowney. It has been a remarkable look. LSU is going to get these guys, but Ed Orgeron has done something just a little bit more unique, and he's such a likable guy.
Well, Louisiana is a football-proud state. I mean, they love their Saints, they love their Tigers, they love football. And he's captured that. He's a Louisiana guy. He talks with the Cajun accent. He shows love for the state. I'm sure that every high school coach in that state absolutely loves Ed Orgeron. I'm sure he gets around to all the schools when he's able to. And those boys from the boot, the players, they want to go to LSU. I've been into that state. I lived there, and then I went in there to try to recruit. Actually, pulled Kenny Young, who now plays for the Rams, out of that state and brought him out to UCLA. He was at John Curtis, but it was a battle, because it's tough to leave Louisiana. You made mention of finding guys everywhere, and it's the truth. In Louisiana, there's so many great-looking athletes and great players. It's just they're everywhere. They're everywhere. That's why that state is, populated with recruiters.
Yeah, Think about their class right now. LSU and Ed Orgeron were able to beat Georgia and Alabama for one of the best tight ends in this class in Eric Gilbert.
And one of the best tight end classes as far as difference makers are concerned. And when you look at the LSU offense this year, so much of the accolades have been heaped upon the quarterback, the wideouts, the running back. But Thaddeus Moss, I think, is a great example of why Eric Gilbert chose LSU. You've got the new offensive philosophy. Thaddeus Moss became a difference maker for them at the tight end position, created mismatches, and this guy right here is a load. 6'5", 6'6", just under 260 pounds, and he moves like a wideout.
He looks like a wideout. He looks like.
Look at him.
This is A.J. Brown.
Yes, and so you start to look.
Oh, he's an NFL player, and so you mentioned Thaddeus Moss and the way they use him. It's great. So if I'm a young high school player and I'm a 6'6", 255-pound tight end, and I want to play in the NFL, I say, where can I go that they're going to develop me, be ready to play in the NFL? Where right now there is a premium put on the tight end that can catch the ball. You look at the great names playing at that level. Well, it's Ohio. I'm sorry, it's LSU. Yeah. And Joe Brady's going to get me ready to go to the league. Ed Orgeron's going to get me ready to go to the league.
No doubt.
It's amazing how the narrative has switched. They were always recruiting at a high level, but there's something very special going on right now.
Winning does that.
Oh, Joe does that.
The Joes, Burrow and Brady, were a big part of that this year for LSU. Let's go over to Tom Van Haren with more.
Yeah, guys, Tom touched on something with LSU that I think is interesting. I wanted to expand on a little bit more. He talked about hitting on those evaluations, making sure your best prospects are your best players. Something else LSU has done that they've changed a little bit is how they're actually recruiting and filling the roster, where it's not just going after the best prospect available no matter the position. They're looking at filling the roster 2 to 3 years out, avoiding holes on that roster, and I think they've done a tremendous job, especially in this class. You guys talked about tight end, Eric Gilbert being the #1 ranked prospect in the past. What we've seen is offensive linemen, defensive linemen, corners, and then really the offense has been lacking. That's not the case anymore, and the strategy that they're using to make sure they avoid any of those holes going forward, that's a critical factor. And you talked about winning. A big part of the success on the field, that always translates over into recruiting. We saw Marcus Dumervil make his commitment earlier today, and he mentioned winning at the highest level. If you want to beat out Alabama and Georgia and all those other programs, Clemson as well, you better be able to show that you can do it now, because it's one thing to sell it to a top recruit, but it's another thing to show them that you can do it, and LSU is doing it right now.
They certainly are, sitting there with a top 5 class. Tom Van Haren, more from Tom later on as we look at the top 5 in the SEC. Alabama sitting there at #1, as they typically do, followed by LSU and Georgia. Yeah, and you could have, that's the way it is, you can have the 6th ranked class nationally and just be the 3rd best in the SEC.
Look at Auburn's defensive line class in this class alone.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. And they're sitting there at 4.
You see Florida there, sitting there at 5th best in the SEC, 7th best nationally, back-to-back 10-win seasons, looking for back-to-back top 10 classes. Chris Doering with the head coach, Dan Mullen.
Here with Coach Mullen, and I know you're splitting duties right now between coaching and recruiting, but today as you look at this recruiting class, you've talked a lot before about the difference between building a team and building a program. What does today say about the progress and towards building a program?
Well, it's coming a lot. You know, I mean, like I said, we'll know more tonight when we get a chance to review the recruiting class a little bit. And you know, I mean, you look at what we're building here. You know, over the years. You know, I mean, we're going to our 2nd straight New Year's Six bowl game, 2nd straight year finishing in the top 10, and you know, you combine that with being the premier academic school in the Southeastern Conference. There's a lot of great things happening here for Florida.
You know, you guys won the state championship, first time in a long time that Florida's been able to officially claim that. How have you been able to take advantage of that with the recruiting throughout the state?
Well, I think the players in the state of Florida look and they sit here and they can say, I can go play for the University of Florida. I can stay here at home and I can go compete for not just SEC but national championships and play for a great program and get the education, have their family come see them play, be involved and live here in a great place. I think everybody, I mean, I know I love living in Florida. Our coaches love being here at the University of Florida, and so I think it is. And I think, you know, obviously winning those 2 games, playing the in-state rivals, and winning both of those games helps. And I think a lot of the prospects in the state see the direction that we're headed.
A lot of people talk about this being a line of scrimmage league. How do you feel like the improvement on the line of scrimmage has come throughout the first 2 years here and today with the signing class you've been able to net?
Well, I think you know, obviously the offensive line over the last couple of years, we've really improved that position in the last couple of recruiting classes. Defensive line, you know, I think this year is going to be a huge help, a key factor to it. I think that's, you know, when we first got here, I thought that's a part we didn't address the way that needed to be addressed. You know, obviously made some changes to make that happen within our coaching staff and the recruiting department. So, you know, but I really, you know, I think David Turner's the premier D-line coach in the league, does such a great job, not just with the guys on the field, but mentoring, developing them off the field. And I think that's going to be a huge, the guys that we're going to sign in this class are going to make a huge impact.
Final question for you here. I know you talked about how difficult it is this time of year. We got Christmas going on. You're trying to get ready for the bowl game. You're recruiting and everything else. As you look forward towards that bowl game against Virginia, where do you feel like you are right now and the focus of the team for Virginia?
Well, it's a Tuesday today, so we got a Tuesday practice today. Coaching staff are running into meetings right now. Had meetings this morning, got meetings this afternoon, then we'll head out to practice. So, you know, a lot of the focus within the program is finding a way to make sure that we're prepared. Guys are prepared, getting ready to go play hard and find a way to get our 2nd straight New Year's Six bowl victory.
Coach, congratulations on the success so far. Appreciate the time.
Thanks. Go Gators.
A couple of Gators there, just very disappointed that he wasn't wearing the Christmas vacation T-shirt. It's that time of the year.
Doesn't Eddie?
Yeah, he should have done that. He's done that before. The Florida Gators here again, looking for back-to-back top 10 classes. How about the Pouncey? They got another set of Pouncey brothers.
They're in all shapes and sizes.
Ethan Pouncey's a corner. You get the Texas transfer wideout, Jordan Pouncey. So you get a wideout in the corner. Remember the cousins of the Pouncey brothers on the line of scrimmage. So there they are, the Florida Gators. See Joshua Braun, who they flipped as well from Georgia earlier this month. Let's go back to Gainesville and Chris Doering. Chris, in your Q&A there with head coach Dan Mullen, you alluded to kind of a change in strategy in recruiting. What is that?
Well, I think the interesting thing was a lot of people criticized Dan Mullen in the past for not being a great recruiter. He's a great developer of talent, but they questioned his ability to recruit. Well, last year he put together a top 10 recruiting class. The problem is they went nationally, and before they even reported for spring practice, they had lost 5 of those guys for one reason or another. So this year, I think they refocused on what their strategy was going to be. They talked a lot about signing the core of this group within a 5-hour radius driving distance-wise for these coaches. That includes the state of Florida into South Georgia and into Alabama as well. So I think that strategy is hopefully going to pay dividends for a couple reasons. One, the acclimation to the culture of the Southeast is a little easier. And secondly, some ties to Florida, the allegiance to the University of Florida, and a little bit more history on the Gator program that I think is going to pay dividends for these guys, not only in the signing class, but as they develop throughout their next 3, 4, 5 years.
That's an interesting thing with the early enrollments and the early signing period. You were talking about the bowl game Florida's got coming up with Virginia, and there are guys that are enrolling and signing that are going to be taking part in practices for the bowl game.
They've already done so. How about this? You mentioned Joshua Braun a minute ago. He's one of the big flips that they were able to get from Georgia. And how about this timeline for Braun? Last week, remember, it was Sunday when Sam Pittman was named the head coach at Arkansas. The Florida coaching staff went and saw Braun on Monday. He decommitted from Georgia on Wednesday, took his last final at his high school that day as well. Friday was in Gainesville, and then Saturday took part in one of Florida's bowl preparation practices. He, along with, as you mentioned, 2 other guys as part of the signing class, were able to do so because they fulfilled their obligations at their high school and they were accepted in the University of Florida. So they were able to participate, which gives them an even further jump on the rest of that class. But I'll say this, I can only imagine what it would be like. One day you're walking the halls of your high school, the next you're practicing against some of the best players in the entire conference or even country for that matter.
You go from being a Georgia verbal commitment to participating in Florida's bowl practice in the span of 6 days. Welcome to recruiting. Chris Doering, appreciate it, man. Good to catch up with you. Thanks for the report.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Chris Doering, former Gator great there in Gainesville. He mentioned Sam Pittman. And again, when you have coaching changes or coordinators that leave and become head coaches, it opens the door. Other programs go, okay, let's see how much that recruit was really about Sam Pittman or not. Elijah Drinkwitz as well. And Lane Kiffin, previously, of course, the head coach at FAU, Tennessee before that as well. SC, he's now in Oxford. And Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, also in Oxford. Week 2 of the Lane Kiffin era in Oxford. Tony, what has been the impact on the recruiting trail?
Oh, it's been good. I mean, I met with Coach Kiffin early this morning in his office, and it looked like he had been extremely busy over the last 9 days. He had 15 commitments when he came in. He was able to add a couple of more to that, and he has done very, very well. He's got some guys that guys like Austin Key is a top 300 inside linebacker. They showed up that position as well. Jack Brown, a guy from just up the road here in Oxford. And so there's other guys like Eli Acker, an offensive tackle, a guy that they're really proud of. The point is, when I talked to Coach Kiffin, he said we've got more recruiting to do, but we kind of like where we are right now. And so, all in all, one thing to keep in mind is they did add Cade Renfro. Cade Renfro from Stevensville, Texas. Now they've got 5, count them, 5 quarterbacks in that quarterback room for spring practice. So it's going to be an interesting time, guys. I talked to a lot of people who have gotten real excited over the last 9 or 10 days since Lane Kiffin was introduced. It is going to be a lot of interest when spring practice rolls around.
He's certainly an interesting guy, and he's active on social media and does all those types of things and grabs your attention. How is he going to use that in recruiting and bring people to Oxford?
Well, first of all, consider the fact, man, that he's got 466,000 followers on Twitter of people who want to read what he can do, and he knows how to use social media, and he knows how to bring attention to the program where he's working. When he first got to Tennessee, remember back in 2009 when he was at Tennessee, he got into a little trouble with some stuff that he said, but you know what? They were talking about the Tennessee program. They were talking about him. And so I think he is looking forward to it. Look, you're playing in the SEC West. You know how difficult that is. The only way is to recruit your way out of this stuff. And he said, look, this time next year we'll be in a much, much different kind of place. This year was about holding the recruiting class together, maybe adding a few more. And based on what we've seen today, they've done that.
Tony Barnhart there in Oxford. We'll talk more SEC as well in just a little bit. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
All right, Matt. Thanks.
Our National Signing Day coverage rolls on. But first, the reigning national champion Clemson Tigers. How were the Tigers built? How about Dabo Swinney? His dominance on the recruiting trail has helped the Tigers rise on the field. Clemson has signed 14 top 50 recruits in the 2015 through 2019 cycles. The previous 6 classes combined had just 8 top 50 recruits. Dabo struck gold at quarterback. We know that with Trevor Lawrence. The sophomore was the second-ranked overall recruit in the 2018 class and has gone 24-0 as a starter during his time there at Clemson. And in the class prior to Lawrence, Dabo Swinney was able to land many of Lawrence's top weapons. Running back Travis Etienne, along with receivers T. Higgins, Amari Rodgers, part of that elite 2017 class. They might be a 3 seed in the playoff, but they're number 1 in terms of our recruiting rankings and class rankings. Head coach Dabo Swinney from the Clemson Tigers getting ready for the playoff and trying to sign and get this recruiting class to bed, joining us here at our National Signing Day coverage. Dabo, every year we talk and there's always some talented players to talk about. How would you assess this class?
Well, it's a special group, you know. I mean, we've got a special group getting ready to graduate and move on, and so it's important that you bring in you know, great guys to replace them, and I think we've done that. I think our staff crushed it, hit all of our needs. You know, we're really focused on the trenches, and you know, we got a great group of offensive linemen and defensive linemen coming in, 3 great backers, 2 great wideouts. Unbelievable quarterback coming from all the way from California, 2 great running backs, a tight end, 2 corners, 2 safeties, and a kicker who's actually going to play soccer and football here. So just really pumped up about the class, and you know, we've never had the number 1 class in the country, and apparently we may have a shot at that this year. It's really not that important to me, but I think it's just a credit to who these young men are.
You mentioned some of the caliber of talent, and we all know that just because you have a 4-star or 5-star doesn't mean that they're going to pan out. But more often than not, it seems like the guys that you recruit do. We see it year in and year out with Clemson. What is the key to not only finding the best talent, but finding the right talent, the right fit, and having those players pan out?
Well, it all goes to our evaluation process and what we're looking for, the criteria, you know, at each position, the fit to our program, and then just transparency. You know, just you know, make sure everybody's on the same page as far as who we are, what the expectations are, you know, what our culture is, and then don't compromise that, you know, and then don't be distracted. Be convicted in our own beliefs, not what somebody else says. You know, Grady Jarrett was a 2-star recruit. Adam Humphries was a 1-star recruit. I think he makes $9 million a year now. You know, and yeah, Deshaun Watson, a 5-star recruit. We've had a little bit of everything. Travis Etienne was a 3-star recruit. So I don't really get caught up in all of that. To me, when we take a young man, we feel like he's a 5-star recruit, regardless of what somebody else may say. So just being, you know, truly convicted into the things that we believe in, and then not compromising, and then just very detailed evaluation and understanding of the fit to our program. I think that's very important, you know. And then if I could just say one thing on top of that is, you know, there's a lot of good players out there, but to me, you know, it's about people first. You know, we recruit people first, players second. And I think the consistency that we've had in our program speaks to the type of young people that have come into our program. And then I think we've done a great job of consistently developing them as young men as they've gone through their Paul journey.
Coach, if you take us back to the beginning, obviously you guys have evaluated well, you've recruited well, you've developed, you've coached them up. But what you've been through doesn't happen without an entirely all-in university commitment. And when you were in the early days of your tenure and you go to your administration, you go to your president, and you say, we have to have this. Did they ever tell you no? Because it doesn't seem like they told you no, because you got it all right now.
Yeah, well, I wish you'd have been here in 2009 and 2010 and 2011 and 2012.
Exactly.
You know, we've earned everything we've gotten here. We didn't get this job with a silver spoon in our mouth. I like to remind people, when we built this new facility, we brought the national championship trophy with us and put it in the lobby. We won the national championship before we ever moved into this new facility. But all of those things came with sustained success. You know, in 2009, I've been told no a lot. But I figured, okay, what can we? I focused more on not what we couldn't do. I focused on what we could do and how we could use what we had, and then just the vision of our program. And then eventually, you know, we won the division the first year. My third year, we won the ACC. My fourth year, we won 11 games. And then we just kind of were able to build it as we went. And, you know, but they made us earn it. They didn't just say, okay, hey, here you go. Here's an open checkbook. And I don't think it works that way. And to be quite honest with you, I wouldn't want it any other way. I love the path that we've taken to get here. And it's been a lot of fun. And for me, it's about sustaining consistency, having consistent success on and off the field. And 8 of our 10 years, we've been top 10 academically. 8 out of the last 9 years, top 10 academically. You know, I'm just super proud of what we've been able to do consistently at a very high level in the classroom and out on the football field.
Dabo, before we let you go, I want to ask you about the early signing period as a whole. Once championship weekend is over, you win the ACC, you essentially have just two free, wide-open weekends to be able to go and hit the recruiting trail, maybe tie up some loose ends. How do you feel about the early signing period now in its third year, and the fact that it also coincides as you're trying to get ready for the college football playoff?
I love it. I mean, it's a formality. You know, the great majority of these guys are already committed. They would have signed back in the summer if you'd let them. In fact, when I was a proponent of having I first proposed having an early signing period like August 1st, August 15th, because most of these guys, they want to get it out of the way. And to be quite honest with you, I think it would clean up some of the bad things that go on in recruiting. Guys being dropped, offers that don't mean anything, those type of things. And then, but the player needs to be protected too. You know, if you did move it up earlier, then if the coach is fired or the coach leaves, then I think those guys should be able to not be bound by that. And they could either say, no, I'm still coming, or hey, I'll wait and sign in February. You know, so because obviously there's a lot of turnover in this world. So I actually was a big proponent of putting it in August. I think it would have been great, but I love it. There's a reason why they're all signing, because they're tired of it. They want to get it out of the way. They've been committed. Most of these guys have been committed for a long time, and so you know, it's fun. It's a fun day. I mean, if you don't enjoy it, it's probably shouldn't be doing it.
You do have to like it if you're going to be a college head coach. There's no doubt about it. Dabo, really appreciate the time as always. Thanks for doing this every year, and good luck in the playoff. We'll see you down the road.
All right. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a good one.
You as well. That's Dabo Swinney, head coach of the Clemson Tigers. Again, these are getting ready for the playoff and trying to sign your class first world problems, right? These are good problems to have. But he's right. Program like that, whether it's December or August, once you got the machine rolling, you can get these guys and they'll sign whenever you ask them to.
Right. He said it. They've been committed for a long time. They're anxious to sign. Yep. You're anxious to get them signed. They get signed. Sure. And, you know, Dabo and his staff have done an amazing job of creating a clear vision for what they want as a program and who fits into that vision, and as he says, they don't compromise it. And to me, that's one of the really important reasons they've had so much success.
Well, it's one of the reasons why they've had very little attrition. They haven't had a ton of suspensions. They haven't had a ton of dismissals. So again, further evidence it is about people. I think the other thing too, when you look at this class, and we'll find out throughout the end of the day about all the mid-years and the guys enrolling early, is they have had so much success getting guys to enroll in January, take part in the program, in the conditioning program, be prepared for spring football, get at least 2 semesters academically under their belt before they ever hit August. That is critical in the development of your football team. And you look at these players, I think it starts with the defensive line. Whether it's Brian Rasee, whether it's Miles Murphy, you take your pick. I mean, they have added depth. Coach and I were talking about earlier, here's Rasee talking earlier about collecting those guys so that when you have rotational depth and there's no drop-off. You look at Clemson right now. They have all of these young defensive front guys after losing all of the guys that they lost a year ago, and there's no drop-off. And that's what this high school class is littered with, both on the edge as a defensive end and on the inside as well. And Coach, you were watching this guy when we showed him earlier, just about his technique, his ability to use his hands to get skinny, all that stuff.
Oh, I mean, he's tremendous. First of all, it's his get off, and then as you said, his technique and his hand placement, his ability to, like right here, the discipline. The discipline to not chase the ball, to come to balance, to be able to take care of his responsibility up the field with the quarterback. They're a little bit ahead of their time, I think. Look at the effort there. You see that name, Venables?
Yeah. Another one, a second one.
There it is.
They're one of their linebackers is Brent's son too. There you go. Yeah.
It is a family atmosphere. You get Sweeney's on the roster and Venables as well. Malcolm Green, by the way, 4-star safety, really got it started this morning. A little flip there from LSU. The safety out of Virginia flipped to Clemson this morning. So Clemson defensively continuing to get it done, and that's why they're in the college football playoff. Lessons from the Big Ten are in the top 40, and just at the bottom of the top 40, it's Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. Again, just about a week or so on the job, trying to cobble together and keep guys in the fold. Tony Barnhart in Oxford with the new coach.
We're joined by Lane Kiffin, the head coach of the Ole Miss Rebels. Coach, you were named to this position back on December 9th, and it has been a whirlwind tour to get us here to National Signing Day. What has it been like?
Well, it's been great, Tony. I mean, it's been an exciting time, from landing on the tarmac and so many people there, and then the press conference, and so trying to hire coaches and recruit at the same time. So we're going fast. We're also going slow, like we discussed this morning, to make sure that we're making the right decisions.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because when we talked earlier today, you said it's very important to be, you got to do these things quickly, but you got to be methodical. You don't want to miss anything, and sometimes in this business that's hard to do.
Yeah, it is, and especially in recruiting here, we didn't just try to sign guys, so it looks like we signed a bunch of guys. So we're taking our time, try to push a lot of guys back, that we're really excited about into February, so that they can come visit. We only had one weekend, so we'll be able to bring guys in January and finish signing the class in February, which is all that matters.
One of the things I thought was interesting that you said that between some guys were in the portal and decided to come back out of the portal when you were named head coach. Some guys had decommitted, decided to commit when you came as head coach. What has that been like?
Well, it was pretty neat, to not really have to do anything. And we had, I think, 4 guys initially that were in the portal that were gone, asked to come back, and a 5th one since then. So that's pretty exciting. And, had some kids that had decommitted that committed back before even talking to them. So, I guess there's some excitement around Ole Miss football.
Well, let me ask you about some guys that you signed today. Eli Acker is a offensive tackle that I know that you and your staff thought highly of.
Yeah, we were able to bring him in this last weekend. Comes from a great family and really huge upside, very long. So we're excited about him.
Austin Keys is a top 100 player at inside linebacker. I know, for all the people talk about you and your offense, defense is very important to you. This looks like a good pickup.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of really good young players, especially on offense, that are already here. So it was important to sign some defensive players, and there'll be a lot more signed as we get into February.
You make really good use of running backs in your offense. You always have. Kendall Bullock was a guy who was with Ole Miss, then he decommitted, then he came back, and you were able to pick him up today.
Yeah, really good pickup for him to come back. Really fast, explosive, very dangerous player. So we're excited to add him to a group of running backs that is extremely talented.
Well, I think people are very interested about the quarterback position. They always are. You signed Cade Renfro out of Stephenville, Texas. He looks like a guy who would play quarterback for Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, he does. You know, good athlete, but really good thrower, and he's got a lot ahead of him. Not one of these kids that grew up with a quarterback coach, you know, since he was 5. So Jeff Lebb, your offensive coordinator, was very familiar with him, having recruited him at UCF, and then at Florida State he was being recruited. So we got on him late here, and we're able to switch him.
All right, going to put the finishes on National Signing Day today. There's more recruiting to do, I understand that, but what's next after today?
Well, finishing our staff, and then also getting on to these guys that are going to sign in February. And also, you know, spent much of the morning this morning for next year's class, talking to the top players in next year's class to tell them, hey, 365 days from now, you know, we'll be celebrating you coming to Ole Miss.
Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin. Coach, thanks for being with us.
All right, Tony, thank you.
Lane Kiffin, appreciate the time. Matt Schick along with Jim Mora and Tom Luginbill here on our National Signing Day coverage on ESPNU. The challenges of coming in right away, and you've got about a week to 10 days before the early signing period. Does that class, I don't want to denigrate anyone who signed in that class, but it almost becomes a throwaway. Does it? Is there anything to that when you're?
You can't throw away any recruiting class. And I think Lane, you know, he came in there and he had some guys that decommitted that came back. You know, when Lane was flying in on the plane to Ole Miss, he was watching these recruits and he was making contact with them and he was trying to salvage the class. You know, I don't think you can't throw away a recruiting class. You have to try to salvage it. Then, as you go forward, then you put a little bit more of your imprint on it. But you don't.
Meaning you're not judged on this class, is what I meant.
Well, you always are judged on it because these kids are going to contribute to wins and losses, and you're judged on wins and losses. So you have to find a way to make it work with these guys that were committed to your program before you became the head coach and decided to stay.
But people know what you were coming in with in terms of 10 days to try and
they know now,
but
they don't remember 3 years.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. But next year is going to be obviously a huge year in recruiting.
Huge year in recruiting. Absolutely. And I think that you do the best you can with the time that you have and the kids that are available. And I thought Lane Kiffin mentioned something very important there, that the month of January will be important for them because you'll know where all the chips fall. All right, you're going to know who everybody has, who's left on the board, who's available, and it's a much smaller player pool to deal with. So you can make some strides if you're Mike Norvell at Florida State or Lane Kiffin in this instance at Ole Miss.
There is another coach that has come back to the college game and certainly knows what it's like to have a short window for that early signing period and then have that full year to sign another class. North Carolina head coach Mack Brown. He's a new hire last year. We thought, well, how's this going to go? The answer, very well, in fact. His return to North Carolina led to a bowl game for the Tar Heels, a near defeat of Clemson, a one-year contract extension he signed years ago, and what looks like a top 20 recruiting class. It's been a pretty remarkable turnaround. It includes a 5-star defensive end in-state, Desmond Evans. You see Miles Murphy as well from right around the corner. It really began last year flipping Sam Howell from Florida State and getting Sam Howell to sign out of Indian Trail and Sun Valley High School. Mack Brown joins us now. We miss having you here on the signing day coverage, Mack, but we certainly like watching you and your team having so much success. What has it been like to have a full year to recruit these high school prospects versus, the couple of weeks you had last year?
Well, Matt and Tom, I miss being there with you guys. 2 years ago, I was sitting here talking about how stupid some of these coaches are, and now here I am. So it flips it pretty quickly when you start looking at that. But the early signing date for a new coach is just disastrous. I mean, you've got no time, and you've got to be careful not to take some kids that you don't really want because you feel like you need to, and then you out-recruit them the next 2 years, and it gets you in trouble. So we did pretty well our first part of that last year. I think we signed 19 kids or something, maybe 6 or 7 in the late signing date. This year it's been so much better. We're already way ahead on the 21 recruits. We're feel like we've got a tremendous class today with the 19s that we've been recruiting now for a full year. And as you guys know, and Tom watches it every day, we're recruiting kids in the 22 class. So the longer you stay at a place, the more familiar you get with the players in your footprint and the coaches. And if you keep your staff, which we feel like we're going to, you've got a lot more continuity. So it just makes it so much more pleasant the second year.
Coach, the goal for you at North Carolina, obviously, is to put a fence around the state. There's no doubt. But it's also an oversaturated state of universities. You've got 4 Power 5 schools within an hour of each other. What has been your philosophy and approach? Obviously, the top end of your class littered with North Carolina kids, great players, particularly along the defensive front. What's been the philosophy in terms of making sure that there's no reason for a North Carolina kid to leave the state?
Tom, we have to become the cool place to be. And to do that, we had to upgrade the facilities. We had to ask our fans to show the players in this state that they were committed, and we sold out. We're one of 8 teams to sell out every home game, and the fans were great, and they supported us. And then you get a Sam Howell, a great young quarterback. We're moving the ball. We're in every ball game, and they see hope for the future. So and when a Sam Howell comes, and he's one of the top players in the state, if not the top player, and he's successful, and all the locals are excited about him, it gives other young guys a chance to follow him because they think it's okay.
Mack Brown joining us, head coach North Carolina, looking at your recruiting class there. You've been out of coaching for a while, but certainly not out of the picture. What reception have you gotten on the trail, and how much did being on TV for 5 years help you?
Matt, I've gotten a tremendous reception. I think one thing is I was very familiar. Sally, my wife, was very familiar with this town, this university, this state. So the boosters are the same. A lot of the high school coaches are either the same or their sons or the assistants that were top assistants at that point are now head coaches. A lot of the people working in the university are the same, or they were students when I was here, and they've grown into this. So it's been a very, very easy transition for me. And I do think the fact that I was relevant because, like you guys, kids watch the shows. And they watched me on TV for 5 years, so it's not like I went away and was not around college football, not studying college football, not studying the assistant coaches, and even on signing day, being aware of where the best players were and who was getting them. So there's no question that my 5 years with ESPN really helped me as I moved back into coaching.
You're a threat in recruiting to others when you're being negatively recruited against. I read that you actually take pride in that. How so?
Well, when all people can say right now is I'm old, and that was obvious when I came back. The age hasn't changed much in this year. So now there's some really prominent programs that are actually telling juniors that, he's not going to be there. He's old. And I thought, what a great compliment for us. I couldn't have anything any better. They can't say that we're bad. They can't say that our facilities are bad. They can't say that nobody cares. All I can say is I'm old, and that was already a fact. So, and I'm staying, so I'm not going anywhere. I think the other thing is, since I'm one of the few coaches in America that wouldn't go anywhere else, this is my last job, that there's so much stability here that scares some of the other universities as well.
Well, Mack, we're glad you're not going anywhere. We're sad you left us, but we're thrilled that you're doing a great job there, and thanks for joining us, and good luck in the bowl game.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. We appreciate all you do for college football.
Absolutely. That's Mack Brown, head coach of North Carolina. And you look at the ACC rankings, again, sitting there at 3rd in the ACC, trying to make North Carolina the cool place to be.
Well, I think it's interesting. I go back, our broadcast crew had the Clemson North Carolina game, and we're sitting in the staff room, and he pulls up his board, and we're looking at their 2 and 3 deep, and just kind of going over where they're either deficient in terms of talent or deficient in terms of depth. And I can remember that conversation distinctly because everything that you're seeing in the class right now is a reflection upon filling the needs and the issues that were on the board that day. And it's a long process, man.
Yeah, it takes a while. Mack's committed to it. He's a great guy, and glad he's back in college football.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, good spirit, and this is going to be there for quite a while, regardless of what other coaches are telling. National Signing Day continues, and these are your class rankings. We started at 40. Let's scroll up there. You see Tennessee at 21. Nebraska has certainly had a nice day. Oregon, Clemson, Miami, USC trying to add to their unfold here. Some of the finalists for Justin Flowe, ESPN 300 prospect, top 10 prospect, number 9 overall, and the top outside linebacker. He's out of California, Tom Luginbill.
Oh, he can roll now. He is explosive. He plays with burst. He's a finisher. And I think, listen, when you can run like this and you can rush the passer and, coach, as you put it, affect the quarterback or impact the defense, boy, I tell you what, man, he can roll. Love it.
Number 9 overall, Upland, California, top-ranked player in the state. We'll see if he stays out there again this season. 135 tackles, 12 sacks this season. In those final schools, we mentioned him. He's got hats on the table as well. Clemson, Miami, Oregon, and USC. So a little ACC Pac-12 battle for the services. Number 1 outside linebacker Justin Flowe joins us now at the home of the Upland Highlanders, Upland High School there in Upland, California. Justin Flowe, appreciate you being patient with us here on National Signing Day. Thanks for sharing it with us. It's now your moment. Where are you headed to play college football?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, first of all, I want to thank God for giving me the strength, power, and will to pursue my lifelong dream of being a student athlete in college. And second of all, I want to thank my grandparents for taking me in and just taking care of me my whole life and everything since I was little. And it's always a blessing, you know, to have them. Then I want to thank my parents, my mom, my dad, you know, for holding me down and everything, making me the man I am today. And I want to thank the Upland coaches and Upland staff for being here all 4 years. It was really a blessing. It's always great to be at Upland High School, you know. Had a great time. And then without further ado, for the next 3 or 4 years, I pursue my athletic and academic career at the University of Oregon.
A big get for the Oregon Ducks and Mario Cristobal as Justin Flowe announces that he is going to sign with the Oregon Ducks. Justin, what went into your decision to play for the Ducks?
You know, Oregon got a great program and everything. I've just been seeing what they've been doing over the years. And Mario Cristobal, he's a great guy. I love being around the coaching staff and everything. He's just the best pick for me personally. I feel like I'll thrive in that program, so that's what I picked.
What was Mario Cristobal and the staff and their pitch to you about what you can do for their program?
They felt like I can come in and make an instant impact. You know, I'm a really good guy, you know, everything, so I can go in and just thrive in their program.
What are your goals and expectations here from the moment you set foot on campus?
I'm just going ready to work and everything. I expect to just come in and I'm gonna play hard. That's what I do. You know, I play hard, so I'm gonna come in and play hard and just hope for the best.
Give us a self-scouting report. What kind of player are the Ducks getting? The fans would like to know, I'm sure.
The Ducks are getting a really hard-working person. You know, I work hard all the time. You know, I just take no for an answer. You know, I'm ready to work. I'm ready to come in and just do my thing.
Well, Oregon will take your yes for an answer. Justin Flowe headed to the Ducks. Justin, appreciate the time and congratulations.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go Ducks, baby.
Let's go Ducks!
Yeah.
The Ducks getting Justin Flowe, number 1 outside linebacker, top 10 prospect. Kayvon Thibodeau last year, number 1 player in the state of California. Another year, another top player in the state of California, staying in the Pac-12, but leaving the state and going for Mario Cristobal.
Right. Well, once again, I think Mario's, background in the SEC. We're seeing it with the way they're playing defense, the way they're running the football. This is a big-time get for them. As you say, you pair him with Thibodeau, and they're going to make some noise. They're going to make some noise. Those kids from the Inland Empire, they can ball. So.
Yeah, these guys out of California, and listen, it's bad for the rest of the Pac-12, right? Really, really good for Oregon. But to have the success that Oregon is having, now listen, they've got to cast a bit of a wider net. They can't build an 85-man roster with in-state kids. but the success that they've had in a variety of different footprints across this country, whether it was a LaMichael James out of Texas, you know, Hawaii with Marcus Mariota, they've done a really good job hitting on some of those guys when they go into other people's backyards to steal them.
It seemed like there was an ebb and flow with Oregon, right? They were the cool school for a while, maybe took a little bit of a dip. Are they back? I mean, in terms of recruiting and being the it school?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Pac-12?
it's a great environment when you go play in Autzen Stadium. Yeah. They've got tremendous facilities still, great support, obviously, from Phil Knight and Nike. You know, they have a different uniform every week, which people like to see. We talk about them on a national stage. They're winning games. Mario's put together a tremendous staff of guys that are committed to his vision. The players like him. You know, Hugh Millen, who's one of my closest friends, his son, Cale, is going to be a really good quarterback for them, and he can't say enough good things about Mario and that staff. So it's an exciting time to be a Duck. As a University of Washington Husky, that's interesting to say.
Yeah,
it's an exciting time to be a Duck.
True.
Is this the program to beat? I mean, are we seeing a sea change at all? Now you see back-to-back top 10, #1 players from the state of California going out there.
Well, I think one of the things that Mario wanted to institute when he got to Oregon was, you mentioned it earlier with the West Coast. There's a lot of different things to do. Maybe football is viewed as being more seasonal, whatever. I think Mario Cristobal came in there and said, listen, we need to put the rest of the conference on notice that recruiting is going to be an every minute of everyday thing here. That means we need to get more imaginative. We need to get more creative. We need to utilize the resources at our disposal. And we need to send a message to the rest of this league that if you're going to beat us on a kid, you're going to have to outwork us.
Yeah, and they're not going to get outworked.
No.
And they do have the resources to be able to just, you know, overload these kids with information.
Yes.
And but you said it's this commitment that Mario and his staff have made.
Yeah.
You know, in talking to Hugh, you know, every day towards the end of Cale's recruitment, you know, he was getting a text from every single coach. It wasn't just a little bit of touch here. It was just overwhelming amounts of attention and love and showing a commitment to that young man and that family.
Top 15 players in the state of California. Again, to reiterate, none of them are staying in state. At least they haven't they haven't signed with an in-state school there. The top 15 programs in the state of California. Certainly uncertainty at SC, and programs like Oregon taking advantage of that out in the Pac-12. So from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, see what kind of changes that we have there. None there in the top 10. Continue to scroll down there. Again, Oklahoma trying to lock up a top 10 class. Penn State looking for another top 15 class. Nebraska, one of the big winners today, sitting there trying to close a top 20 class. E.J. Smith, Emmitt Smith's son, signing with Stanford a couple of hours ago with us on our ESPN coverage. Matt Schick, Jim Mora, and Tom Luginbill. Let's talk a little SEC here. And we saw Alabama there in the class rankings, usually at #1, usually in the top 5, and that's where they're going to finish there right now with the #2 class. Jim, if you had to pinpoint, outside of the winning, which obviously people want to be a part of, why do they continue to have so much success?
Resources, commitment, and then their ability to stay ahead of the curve. You know, Nick Saban is tireless. You know, he's always looking for a better way to do something. He never says, I got it, or we got it. And then they've got the resources. We were just talking about the way they recruit. They can cover a lot of ground or a lot of air quickly. They can get to players quickly. You know, when you fly in on a private jet, and you're an assistant coach.
Oh, I know.
Okay, players, whoa, wait a minute now. You know,
I didn't know Nick was coming to visit.
So besides the winning, it's just the commitment. And then I think this, you get on your official visit, you have this perception of Nick Saban, and then you go to his house and he puts on the karaoke machine, he sings and he dances. That's endearing, you know, because anyone that knows Nick, I mean, I've known Nick forever, he's a great guy. Now you get him on TV in front of a media and he doesn't necessarily open up, but he opens up singing and dancing, and the players and their families love that.
Just the resources that have been put forth by the university. They, you know, whether it's student assistants to break down film, whether it's a coach that's been let go and they bring him on as an analyst, and now all of a sudden you're getting that guy's wisdom, that guy's ideas, that guy's experiences, to your point, that you can draw from and get better and learn maybe there's a different way of doing this. Oh, I hadn't thought of that before. And then putting all of those resources to work, it's like,
they're a machine.
It's a machine, and I referenced that earlier with Clemson and Dabo when we had him on. The university has made a commitment that football
Alabama doing a great job of knowing what their needs are going to be, even dealing with NFL early departures, Judy, Smith, and Ruggs possibly all leaving. And then you've got, as they fill in the gaps with Tiayu, Jones-Bell out of Miami, Javon Baker, Tayshawn Holden. So trying to just reload.
Good roster management.
Every year. Yeah. They know how to manage things out there in Tuscaloosa. Their Iron Bowl rival, Auburn, seemingly every year, also a top 10 class. Their highest ranking so far in the last 5 classes is 7th, and they're sitting there right now with a number 6 ranking. What do you like so far about this class that Gus Malzahn's putting together, Luke?
The group of defensive front people, and then the outside linebackers, really, really strong. I think the middle of their defense, from a depth standpoint, will be as good, if not better, than it has been under Gus Malzahn. They have just loaded up with players. Wesley Steiner's one of them you see right there. They've got themselves a running back / athlete in Tank Bigsby that I think is a different type of back than the backs they currently have when it comes to big playability. And again, I go back to the defensive line. What they're going to lose, everybody's aware of. But when you have had a defense like that, Coach, and you're playing defense the way they are, with that type of player, you're going to attract more players like them.
Yeah, to me, they exceeded my expectations this year as a football team because I knew that Bo Nix was probably going to struggle a little bit. Yeah. I was with him at the Elite 11, and I loved him. Loved him, but you know, he has some growing to do, but their defense was so dominant. And it's fun to me when you see an offensive coach like us say, you know what, I have to make a commitment to defense because he really understands his team and how he's going to win. And that defensive line they've been great. They'll continue to be great. Yeah.
I always get those elite receivers as well, those speedsters. Anthony Schwartz a couple of years ago, and now Hudson and Capers out of Georgia, J.J. Evans, in-state recruit out of Alabama. So, again, geography matters when it comes to this. And when the SEC said, you know what, let's welcome in Texas A&M into the fold, they just increased the footprint. There you see 46 of the ESPN 300 right now. 60% of the top 300 prospects in high school football reside in the SEC footprint.
Well, and Coach, we spoke earlier about the states that border Florida. Yep. We consider Texas now the SEC footprint, obviously because of Texas A&M. But if you took Texas out of there and you look at the states that border Florida and the caliber of players that are in those states, that's why the conference has been strong.
Yep.
You see the boot there? 13 ESPN 300 prospects in the state of Louisiana. LSU nabbing a bunch of those. Top Van Haren with more on Ed Ogeron's Tigers.
Well, it's been an interesting day for LSU. It's been a little up and down. There has been a ton of activity for LSU, and they're still sitting at number 4. There hasn't really been any movement, and it's because of what's happened both on the positive side and negative. They lost a commitment from Damon Clowney. They saw Malcolm Green flip over to Clemson. They're also watching wide receiver Jermaine Burton, who's considering Georgia. He could flip. Raheem Jarrett flipped to Maryland earlier. Now, there has been a lot of positive. They landed Marcus Dumerville. They landed Phillip Webb, and they're also in on it for Jordan Burch, who we're going to see coming up pretty soon, his commitment. He's the top uncommitted prospect still left to make his announcement, and he's considering LSU, Alabama, Clemson, South Carolina, and Georgia. So if LSU can finish with Jordan Burch, I think it's an outstanding day for them. Already a really good day, but some positive and some negative for the Tigers.
Going to be interesting to see what LSU does and how they continue to close, sitting there with the number 4 prospect. And you mentioned Jordan Burch. He's the number 5 player in the ESPN 300. Hammond High School helping lead the school to 3 consecutive state titles. It is an in-state battle and an out-of-state battle. That number 3 defensive end is going to make his announcement coming up next here at our National Signing Day coverage. Is about to make his announcement. Jordan Burch, what makes him the number 3 defensive end, Luke?
Look at this, Coach. Another defensive lineman. Imagine that. Just so big and strong and physical. A guy that I think might end up moving down inside or could move down inside. Maybe a 5-tech type kid, but big, strong point of attack player.
From Columbia, South Carolina. The banner on his Twitter profile, I just looked at it, says they wanted a monster. I decided to give them one. So there it is. One school is going to get one, and a high-impact defender right now. Again, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, LSU, And the school right down the street, South Carolina. Doesn't do many interviews. He's not active on social media, has not offered many clues, so we're about to learn the answer to the very important question from Jordan Burch in Columbia, South Carolina, at Hammond. We go to him live now. Jordan, the floor is yours. Where will you be headed to school?
For the next 3 to 4 years, I will be taking my academic and my athletic talents to the University of South Carolina.
Jordan Burch kept the decision under wraps. Nobody except his closest confidants knew the decision, and he is headed to South Carolina. The commute will be a short one, right down the street there from Hammond, headed to the Gamecocks. Jordan, tell us what. What was that? Yep, Jordan, I asked you. Sorry, we got the communication issue resolved here. What made South Carolina the right choice?
Every visit I took, it felt like a home visit. I love the coaching staff. I love the people there. It's in town. I don't think I could have made a better decision.
Was there any part of you that wanted to leave town? Did that ever enter your mind during this process?
There was a part. At some point I did while I was searching for schools with my mom, but then I came to the conclusion that this is the place for me.
How would you describe your game? What is South Carolina getting in Jordan Burch?
They're going to get a hard worker, a kid who doesn't take plays off. I'm going to encourage my teammates, and I'll play as hard as they need me to play and better.
You know, the quarterback of your high school team is Jackson Muschamp, is Will Muschamp's son. How instrumental was he in getting you to stay home?
He really hasn't said much. I mean, he just lets me decide. I haven't heard much from him, but he's a good friend, and I like his dad.
What do you like about his dad?
He's a good coach. I see that the program is rebuilding, so that's one reason why I chose South Carolina, and I feel like he has good plans for me. I respect him as a man.
If you could think about a player that you model your game after, whether it's in college or in the NFL, is there someone you try to emulate?
NFL, I would say kind of Julius Peppers, and speed moves, I would say Khalil Mack.
Those are pretty good guys to try and mimic. Jordan Burch signing with South Carolina. I would imagine your family and your friends are very excited to know that you're going to be right down the street. I imagine you told them before you made the announcement. What was their reaction?
They were all excited. They said, it's my choice, but whatever I feel. So we sat down and we prayed about it and found out this was the best decision for me.
Jordan Burch headed to South Carolina, staying right at home. Jordan, congratulations. Thanks for sharing the moment with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jordan Burch. Look, this was we didn't know what to expect, but when you look at the hats, you look at the schools, think about the season South Carolina had, you had to think maybe they were an underdog, but sometimes the home team can't be beat, and this is one of those instances.
This is one of those instances, and I really believe this. I believe the fact that South Carolina, in the completion of their football operations complex, which was about 10 years behind, all right, this past spring and what that did for them in recruiting momentum, regardless of what took place on the field, being able to compete when a kid comes to your program, comes on campus, comes in your building with the top level programs across the country and within your conference. You got Clemson across the state. That's really, really important. And now South Carolina finally has that. And I think that's played a big role for them in recruiting, because it's not just Jordan Burch. This is a really strong class top to bottom.
How about when he says for the next 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, that's the new line.
That was great. Yeah, that's a confident young man.
I remember covering the South Carolina spring game and walking through that facility. and just giving the coaches now, and obviously getting to be there for at least another year, couple years, typically 3 or 4 more years, to be able to recruit to that, giving them a chance. Look, we've built this thing, now let's recruit to it. And maybe he is an example of, look, if you've got the facilities, give us a chance to use these to our advantage.
You need to show the parents and you need to show the student athlete that you're going to do everything possible to help them attain their goals, to reach their objectives in life. And that's facilities, that's support, academic support, medical support, you name it. And the facility is just the place where they're going to spend most of their day, most of their time on campus, and it's, to me, a great indicator of the commitment that the school is making.
Becomes the highest-ranked South Carolina recruit for the Gamecocks since Jadeveon Clowney, who obviously was a huge player there and eventually the #1 pick of the NFL draft. Not asking you to compare the two players, but how would you assess the impact that Jordan Burch can have there on the field in South Carolina?
Well, they've already had a big impact with Javon Kinlaw. All right, who was a monster along the defensive front. And I think when a player of this stature decides to stay at home, it sends a message to other players at the position of similar stature that, hey, this is okay. I made this choice, and I'm excited about it. And then all of a sudden, if you start seeing an improvement on the field as a result to better players coming into your program, now all of a sudden that starts to snowball. It really starts to help you. You know, Jadeveon Clowney it's interesting because the young man made a comment in there. He goes, what do you get? When you ask, what are you going to get? You're going to get a hard worker that doesn't take plays off. I think that was always one of the chief complaints of Jadeveon Clowney at times was, as dominant as he would disappear. And that's something very, very important. So if you're asking me to compare the two, if this kid doesn't take plays off, he's already got a leg up, man. He's ready to roll.
His high school coach, Eric Kimmery, is quoted as saying, look, he could play tight end, receiver.
Sure.
He can throw the ball really well. I don't think he's going to be asked to do that at South Carolina, but a versatile athlete now going to stay home there at South Carolina. Congratulations to Jordan Burch and Will Muschamp, the father of his high school quarterback friend there.